Big one lined up. Big one lined up today because there is a ton to unpack. This is like when you move and you go into that one room and you're like, where do I even start here? I guess that's actually when you're packing up, but we're unpacking today. But there are a lot of things to talk about on this Monday that, I don't know, like, not to pull a Mike Damone, but I got up and cracked a window and was like, woke up in a great mood. I don't know what the hell happened. It's 40 degrees out. Like, what happened? Well, what are we doing here? We had a false spring, and now we're back to late winter or early spring, whatever, and, you know, hey, it is what it is. Today is it the 31st, Eddie?
Yes.
So
it's Monday.
Let's get this out in the open right now. Everything that you hear on this show tomorrow is going to be factual. We're not going to pull some stupid April Fool's hijinks, right? Agreed? Are we cool with this?
Yeah.
Okay. Because we're not 12.
I
right?
promise I'll be here.
Okay. So we're not going to do like some fake story, whatever else on April Fool's Day. Plenty to talk about on this Monday. Good afternoon to you. My name is Jake Query. You just heard the voice of Eddie Garrison. It's Query and Company here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. And I'll begin with this. Kudos once again to the National Football League. The NFL, man, I'm like, nobody's better. Nobody's better than the NFL. They are the master marketers and I'm saying this in all seriousness. I'm not being facetious. If you are a fledgling sports league, by the way, I believe fledgling is the most misunderstood word in the English language. Do you know what fledgling means, Eddie? And
No.
I will not be offended if you do not.
No.
I think I'm correct in this. I'm going to test myself. I think most people think fledgling means failing or struggling. And I don't think it means failing or struggling. I think it simply means still trying to get, like, going through adolescence or in the infancy of something before it really takes off. Like the Fisher's Freight, the new indoor football league team. That's a fledgling league. That doesn't mean it's a failing league. It doesn't mean that it's I think people confuse it with, like, sinking.
A person or organization that is immature, inexperienced, or underdeveloped.
Yeah, so just trying to get its footing underneath it, right? So if you were a fledgling league, the indoor league that the Fisher's Freight play in is a good example. You need to follow the blueprint of the NFL. What the NFL does, and I have no idea if this is by design. I think it is. I don't know if it was this calculated. But there was a time where in the National Football League, the year began in September, around Labor Day. The season began. They played every game on Sunday, every Sunday, and then Monday night. And then they had the Super Bowl in January or maybe early February. And then rinse and repeat again in September. You had a draft in April. But now, as I've talked about many, many times, what they've done, and it's brilliant, is they have not only made themselves a 12-month conversation. Hallelujah for doing sports talk radio for that, right? But in addition to that, they have managed to do it and have events that are right up against all of those that threatened it as the 800-pound gorilla. There are very few things in sport today, very few, that contend or even can sniff within the realm of impact of the National Football League and the American culture. The Super Bowl is the king daddy of them all. The only thing that might come close, truthfully, in terms of getting transcendent fan base to follow it, and by that I mean the Super Bowl, everybody in America watches the Super Bowl, whether they're a fan of football or not. It's just a social event. The only thing close to that in terms of a social event that people follow in this country to the level of the Super Bowl is March Madness. That's it. There's nothing else. You name a big sporting event off the top of your head. The Masters, the Daytona 500, the Indy 500, the World Series, whatever it might be.
Hello, friends.
That's right. That was not a bad Jim Nance.
Thanks. I wasn't trying, but thank you.
It was a little deep for Jim Nance. He whispers it a little bit more in his voice, right? But nonetheless, those events, I don't know that you have the passerby audience like you do for the NCAA tournament. You know, people that don't pay attention year-round all fill out a bracket, and people that don't pay attention all year round make a buffet to go to a Super Bowl party. So here we are coming off of the Final Four weekend, the weekend that it's set, and going into the Final Four. And the big story in the NFL cities, the owners' meeting. NFL owners' meeting taking place right now. And Eddie Garrison, do we happen to have the breaking news sounder by chance for this Monday edition of Query and Company? Thank you. This from contributors to this show, Stephen Holder, and also, of course, member of this radio station, James Boyd, both. Shane Steichen has said, now I don't know if this is breaking news. I'm being a little facetious, and I'm taking liberty with our breaking news sounder. Shane Steichen has said at the owners' meeting that he is going to give equal reps throughout OTAs to Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson. Shane Steichen says equal reps, and whichever one is more consistent will be the one that's the starting quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts between Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson. Now, here's my question. Facetiously speaking, where have you been, Shane? Where have you been? Were you not there when Chris Ballard said that he wanted to create competition? Were you not there when they signed Daniel Jones and the Colts said, no, this is an open competition? Or were you not there when you yourself, Shane Steichen, said that next season there was going to be battles at every position? Everyone and their brother knew when they signed Daniel Jones they were not paying. What was the contract again, Eddie, for Daniel Jones? Was it $8 million a year? Am I underselling that?
I think it's 14.
Whatever it was, I can't remember the total. But everybody knew when they signed it, it's like, yeah, this is not a clipboard holder. You are signing this guy for twofold. Number one, to really push Anthony, even if Jim Irsay has it written in stone that Anthony Richardson's going to be the starter. He doesn't. But even if he did, you would still publicly declare that this is going to be a competition because the fans want it, the general manager wants it, the quarterback probably wants it. And at the very least, what you are doing is you are pushing Anthony Richardson to try to tell him the time is now. It's now or never. The footwork, everything else, you're on a short leash now. But Shane Steichen coming out and saying that, now it's official, I guess, but it kind of felt to me to be redundant. Also, speaking of coaches in the Colts history, new job for Frank Reich. You want to read that officially, Eddie?
I was going to let you do it, Jake, but Pete Thamel earlier with ESPN says that Andrew Luck has hired Frank Reich to be the Stanford coach for just one season. They will then do a national search after the upcoming college football year.
So Andrew Luck bought himself a year, right?
That's what it sounds like.
Andrew Luck probably, when asked about it, said something along the lines of we just decided we need a year. We Frank Reich's a guy that he's a football coach. Andrew Luck, he bites words, as I always say. It's been a while since we've been able to talk about Andrew Luck and biting words, but he does. So anyway, that's going on with the owners' meeting and the latest in terms of the NFL. They'll talk about some of the different rule changes that may be proposed, the tush push. I guess they're discussing whether or not that should be
kickoff rules
banned. The kickoff, they always make these minor tweaks and changes. But kudos to the NFL for creating another event. I'm old enough to back in my day. I'm old enough to remember when the NFL owners meeting was not a thing. 4 years ago, not a thing.
7 years ago.
Not a thing, I'm telling you. Abe Lincoln, unaware of the NFL owners meeting.
Another breaking news item, Jake.
I told you, it's a lot to unpack today.
Jordan Schultz, 10 minutes ago with CBS Sports. Don't ask him to meet you at Starbucks. According to him, Sam Ehlinger will be signing with the Denver Broncos, and he will be their third-string quarterback.
So another spot's open. You know what's going to happen, don't you? Mark my words. My name is Jake Query.
Hello, Jake.
Thank you. Hello. I host Query and Company on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan, and I am prepared with no evidence whatsoever, but nothing more than a gut instinct, and my gut is not as big as it used to be, but it's still there because I'm 52. The Colts are going to take a long, hard look now that Sam Ehlinger is out the door at replacing him as the number 3 quarterback with another Texas product and Quinn Ewers in the 3rd or 4th round. I firmly believe. I don't know that they probably are not the only team looking at this, right? The draft is a crapshoot. But if he is on the board in, like, let's say round 4, I firmly believe the Colts have very serious interest in him. I think at the combine, there were a couple people that mentioned it. I have a strong suspicion. Now, not that he's going to be the starter or anything like that, but I have a very strong feeling that the Colts have taken a look at Quinn Ewers and feel that he is a guy that might be worth kicking the tires over to see if he's somebody that's worth a flyer on to have on your roster for a couple of years from now. But we shall see what happens with that. The Final Four is set. 3 weeks ago, this was the conversation. 3 weeks ago, this was the narrative. 3 weeks ago, this was the popular phrase in the American culture. And 3 weeks ago, everybody and their brother was jumping up and down saying it. This tournament selection committee completely screwed this up. They have missed seeds all over the place. What in the hell is Louisville not doing? Why are they not a top 4 seed? How in the world did Carolina get in over West Virginia and Indiana? Who in their brother possibly thinks that Purdue is a 4 seed, but Michigan is not, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And let's just take a look, shall we, at the Elite Eight. I have it before me right here. The seeds of the teams in the Elite Eight. A 1 versus a 2. A 1 versus a 3. A 1 versus a 2. And a 1 versus a 2. Houston has possibility now, and they're not going to do it, but it is possible that Houston will become the first team ever in NCAA tournament history to win a national championship by playing in their region the highest seed possible in every game, and then get to the Final Four and have to beat 2 number 1s. Never been done before. And it has the possibility of happening now because, for as much as we complain about the seeding and the manner in which the NCAA selection committee goes about it, clearly their estimation of the way teams fall in terms of a power structure was dead on. Dead on. Any tournament, what you want in the end, and yes, the NCAA tournament is largely based upon and built upon and beloved because of the possibility of a George Mason. The possibility of last year's NC State. The possibility of, LSU in 86 as an 11 seed. Those kinds of things. And here's the thing, Butler, obviously. Those things are fabulous, and they are compelling stories in the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. But the data would tell you, the history would tell you, the television numbers would tell you that, in fact, the numbers go down when those teams get in, and people want to see great games. They want to see great matchups. And there's something about the tournament that's unique in the fact that you will watch a game. There's no way that on a drizzly February afternoon that I sit down for an entire 2 hours and watch Florida and Texas Tech. That immediately gets passed over and I'm on to Shawshank, right? But Saturday night, go out to dinner, we sat there and watched it, and I'm watching the game, and I had Texas Tech in my Final Four. No one cares about their bracket, but I'll tell you that I had Texas Tech in my Final Four. And I already had, I'm trying to think of who was Duke already in at that point, or was Texas Tech the first to punch or was Florida the first to punch the ticket? Trying to think of the way it fell. I think either way, maybe that was the first game. But I'm sitting there watching it. And Texas Tech's up 11 with 3.5 minutes to go.
Yeah, you're right. It was Florida. Texas Tech, yeah.
That was the first one, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, okay, first domino here, right? Because I had a chance to go 4 for 4 in the Final Four, like most people did because of everything I just spelled out. But I'm watching it, and you could see it. Florida hits a 3. The lead's down to 8. And Shannon says to me, they're out of time. Texas Tech's going to win the game. Florida can't win the game. They don't have enough time. And I said, Florida's going to win by 4 to 6 points. You watch. Because I could just feel it unraveling. Texas Tech comes down, has a bad possession, shot clock violation. Florida comes down, hits a 3. I said, Florida's going to win this game by 4 to 6 points. They're the number one free throw shooting. Not literally, but like they are a fabulous shooting team from the free throw line and the three-point line. Lo and behold, they win by 5, I think it was. And, yeah, you can bemoan that. And I thought Texas Tech and their coaching staff was very impressive. But Florida is very, very good, and Florida was very composed. Boom, they punched their ticket, and now they're in. You wouldn't watch that game necessarily in the regular season, but you want to see great finishes. You want to see rallies like that. You want to see great games. And theoretically now we're going to have, in the Final Four, we're going to have 3 of them. One would assume. Because you can crunch the numbers and look at it as much as you want of Duke and Houston, and you can simulate it 20 times and come up with a reason why each different team is going to win 10 times. You look at Duke and the way that they are able to move the ball and the efficiency offensively and Cooper Flagg generating things, and you go, okay, Duke has been the most consistently great team in the tournament. Duke is the one that has planted their flag at midcourt more often with resounding oomph than anybody else in the tournament. Then you look at Houston, and you say, okay, if you look at what Houston did against Tennessee, they came out, they were stifling, they hit shots, they got out to like a 19-point lead. I think at one point it was 21, maybe 23. And every time that Tennessee made a mini run, Houston stamped it out. And so you can see why Houston defensively might be able to give fits to Duke. Auburn has an injury now to deal with, but fast and furious and long. And again, Auburn against Michigan. Back against the wall a little bit, they flip a switch, let's go. And you can find a million reasons why they're going to blow Florida off the floor. But then you look at Florida and you go, I don't know, man. They can shoot from everywhere. They're composed. Probably underrated in terms of the coaching. So it's going to be a great Final Four. But it feels like a Final Four, right? Partially because of what happened Friday night. And yes, Houston is an exceptional basketball team. And Kelvin Sampson, as much as I don't care for Kelvin Sampson is a fabulous basketball coach. There's no denying that. I don't think anybody's ever denied that. Kelvin Sampson, everything from the intensity that his team plays, his attention to detail defensively, the nonstop coaching that takes place in terms of late in the game, getting on guys when they need it, pushing guys when they need to. He's a fabulous basketball coach. Kelvin Sampson is undeniably the best basketball coach in the 21st century in Indiana University basketball history. That's assuming the 21st century started in 2001, by the way. But he is a fantastic basketball coach. Now, I personally don't care for him, and I think he's non-scrupulous, and I think he's arrogant as all can be, and I think he got what was coming to him in Indiana. But that game against Purdue, having said all of that, and I'm never a guy that says these things, kudos and credit to Houston for designing an unbelievable inbound play inside of 3 seconds left in that game. And Houston went back and saw there was a very similar play to that against Michigan State for Purdue, where Braden Smith did the same thing, where he was forced to retreat away from the inbound passer to guard on the wing because of the way they switched. And kudos to Houston. And this is what I mean when I say Kelvin Sampson is a hell of a basketball coach. Kudos to Houston for recognizing that and coming up with that play and having it in their arsenal when it mattered most. And there were questionable calls in that game against Houston. There was a goaltending call that was questionable that went against Houston in that game. And I do not ever think that officials intentionally sway one way or the other. I actually do enough work now for officials at both the high school and college levels at the NCAA and the IHSAA in terms of the video work of instructional video. I do voiceovers for that, and so I get to see, I don't see the video, but I see the scripts and the narration. Eddie, you've helped me out with those, so you hear how detailed it is. It is incredibly finite, the things that officials need to know. But there is an element of human error in anything. We all do it. I do it. We all err in our job. In that game, there were errors that went not in the way of Purdue, and I thought Purdue, it put them in a, I'm not going to say it cost them the game, but Purdue fans, your team, and yes, I've been a cheerleader for Purdue the last 2 weeks. Apologies to Indiana fans that expect different from me, but not really apology because Purdue merits it. And I thought Purdue had a fantastic season. I thought that Purdue, based on what they were coming off of a year ago and navigating through, learning how to play a different way without Zach Edey, Matt Painter did Matt Painter things. And that team was extremely fun to watch. That team plays hard. That team had its limitations, for sure. And Houston took advantage of those limitations. And in reality, Purdue probably went as far this year as you could expect them to go, or as that team, by design, by basketball gods, was believed that it could go. They got everything out of that team that they could. It was disappointing the way that they lost because it certainly felt like and looked like there was a push on Braden Smith. And as I said on Friday night, it's only fitting that a team coached by Kelvin Sampson would actually win a game based on illegal contact. Perfect for Kelvin Sampson. Perfect. But I thought that the situations, Purdue had situations taken away from them at no fault of their own. And there were calls that went both ways. But in the end, it probably balanced out the way the basketball gods would have liked, because that season, if I would have told you at the beginning of the year that Purdue was going to go down to the wire in the Sweet 16 against the number 1 seed and lose on the final possession, you probably, if you're a Purdue fan, would have bought that and said, I'm good with that. I'm good with that. And in addition to that, Purdue has so owned Tennessee. So owned Tennessee. You go to the top of Rocky Top now, it's like the moon. Neil Armstrong planted a flag up there. That's how much they own Tennessee. You go to the top of Lookout Mountain and look out over it, and all you see is a cavalry of Purdue people coming in. That's how much they own Tennessee. So that water was going to find its level eventually anyway and balance out. So you were playing with house money anyway, and probably who knows what would have happened against Tennessee. We shall see in regards to that. But in terms of Purdue and kind of where they go from here, they already have had a couple of players now that have entered their name into the transfer portal, and Matt Painter has said he's going to be active with it. What happens for the Boilers moving forward? We'll talk to Sam King about exactly that, and we'll do it on the other side. We'll also get you caught up on who is still in contention for a week's worth of lunch from Cluster Truck. All of it as we roll on here. Monday edition, Query & Company on the Fan. Here is a furious argument that I've heard people get in from time to time regarding this song, Eddie. Which is the signature song of Leonard Skinner? Sweet Home Alabama or Freebird?
Ooh. It's a good question.
I personally think there's a definitive answer on that. To me, it's not even up for debate. But a handful of years ago, when the movie Sweet Home Alabama came out, everyone was like, oh, it's Sweet Home Alabama. And I'm like, yeah, that song has its moments. But consistently, Freebird has had the bigger one. I think it's Freebird because Freebird is not only the anthem for Leonard Skinner, it's the anthem for an entire genre and era. What do you yell at a concert? Do Freebird! I think Freebird's their signature song. You seem uninvested in this discussion.
I mean, I bet it just depends on who you ask, right?
We'll ask Sam King. How's that? Lafayette Journal and Courier is where you can find his writing on the always packed and still available to be sponsored guest line is where we find Sam King. Sam, Leonard Skinner's signature song, your thoughts?
Tuesday's Gone.
That's a great song, by the way. That's an awesome song.
It's got to be Freebird, right?
I think. Here's the thing. Tuesday's Gone is my, like, I don't know if telepathically what just happened there, but that is my favorite song by them. Tuesday's Gone.
There you go.
It's unbelievable. All right. So Tuesday's gone, and so too are the Purdue Boilermakers in terms of the NCAA tournament after a very hard-fought game against Houston. Let's begin with this. You have covered the Boilers for a while now. Part of the tournament and disappointments of it is building off of it and picking up the pieces. Question is, we already know of two players that have entered the transfer portal, Waddell and Berg, but neither one marquee players. Are we going to see a more seismic shift in the roster with Purdue this year than we have in most years in the offseason?
I don't believe so. And my personal thought is that there will be no more players entering the portal. And that doesn't mean that there aren't players who are going to test the NBA waters and things like that, because Purdue definitely has some guys who I think should, just to get evaluated, if nothing else. But more likely you're going to see inclusions or guys brought in through the portal, which is something that Purdue hasn't done a whole lot of. But when Matt Painter does it, it seems to be the right guys, Lance Jones, David Jenkins, Evan Boudreau years ago, people like that just kind of fit a need to make your team whatever you need. In this case, a little bit tougher and a little bit better defending the rim. So I would look for Purdue to go after some quality big men who can give you minutes, whether that's as a starter or as a reserve, I don't know. But if you can bring back everybody else who, as of right now, is still on the roster and add to it, and then you use the motivation, like you said, from the way that game played out in the Sweet 16, I think the future could be one that Purdue could do something it hasn't ever done in its history.
Do you think that when you look at, Sam, Braden Smith, we'll begin there. You talk about players that could test the NBA waters. I think Braden Smith against Houston really sent a message to people, and I saw a lot of reaction to people like, holy cow, this guy is generationally good at the point guard position as a college basketball player. I think he opened up a lot of people's eyes to he could be an NBA point guard. Now, does he test the water? I'm assuming you're talking he and Kaufman-Wren. Those are the two players that would test the waters. Do you anticipate both of them to do exactly that for the evaluation purpose?
I don't know. I don't see why Braden Smith especially would not, because he's a guy who Matt Painter believes is a guy who's going to play in the NBA for a long time. So if that is true and he's that kind of a player, you definitely want to hear what NBA scouts are looking at in terms of you, where you can get better, and how they kind of see you fitting into an NBA rotation. So you can only use that information and get better, or you can say, wow, my stock is really high right now. Let's go for it. But, there were a lot of people who thought that Braden Smith's success as a sophomore and freshman was strictly tied to Zach Edey, and I think that he proved that it was anything but. Maybe in some cases Zach Edey's success was a little bit tied to Braden Smith, winning National Player of the Year 2 years in a row with him as the point guard. So that I think this game maybe opened some people's eyes. Those of us who've seen it for 3 years, and especially even throughout this year before more eyes get on the program, really thought that Braden Smith was he kind of elevated his game to the next level, and then to absolutely dissect the nation's best defense that we saw 2 days later gave Tennessee more than it ever wanted. I think that a lot of people now are going to be like, okay, well, Braden Smith is legit, deserves to be consensus first-team All-American, and if he comes back, probably is the top choice for preseason National Player of the Year anyway.
Sam, let me tell you the one thing that would worry me if I'm a Purdue fan, and then I want you to talk me off the ledge or tell me why I'm wrong. Sam King, by the way, our guest, Lafayette Journal and Courier. Braden Smith, if you look right now, let's say he's drafted late first round, early second round, okay, whether it be this year or next year. There's a rookie salary structure. Obviously, he's going to be in the league a long time, one would assume. So in the end, it all balances out. If he is now widely regarded, as I believe he is, as the best point guard in college basketball, some school that has unlimited pockets and boosters, a Texas, I'm just going to throw that name out there, could come and say, NIL money, $4 million, $5 million a year. Come to Austin for a year. You got a year left. Is that a threat for Purdue? Because we know that he's got some NIL deals in West Lafayette, but I don't know that it's to the level that he might be able to get on the quote-unquote free agency open market. Is that a legitimate concern?
He's been offered a lot of money, not that kind of money that you're just mentioning, but to leave before. And I would assume, based on the landscape of college basketball, that that certainly will be the case again. The thing, I think he has the most value with Purdue, knowing the system, knowing the whole team's coming back. But sometimes that doesn't really matter a whole lot when you're talking about these kinds of paydays. But the way I look at it is, if Purdue can't afford to be competitive enough in NIL to keep a guy like that with 1 year left, then really, like, where is Purdue? Like, you've got to at some point adapt to the NIL world. And when you have a player of that caliber who's going to net those kind of offers, you at least have to come back and say, hey, maybe we can't give you $4 or $5 million, but this is what we can offer, plus the chance to win a national championship next year, go to a Final Four or whatever it is, and really cement your legacy, as maybe the top 5 greatest Boilermakers of all time, whatever it might be. So I would expect Purdue to combat any kind of NIL deals that come in. I just don't know how you do that, but I would imagine that you take a really aggressive approach to make sure that if he is playing college basketball next year, that it's in West Lafayette.
When Matt Painter said that they're going to be active in the portal, was that Matt Painter sending a message to his team of, hey, we're going to look at all angles? Or was that Matt Painter simply saying, look, folks, don't treat me like I'm a dinosaur. As Sam mentions on the radio, I have the ability to accentuate my roster, but I'm not necessarily going to use it as the biggest tool. Or are we seeing Purdue slowly inching towards what everybody else does?
No, I think it's more of Purdue knows it had some shortcomings this year. Rim protecting, obviously not having Zach Edey was evident in that regard. And then after losing to Houston, that's one thing Matt Painter said was, we've got to get more physical. We've got to get tougher. And he took the blame for that, for not getting the team prepared. But if you can go get a guy who's already physically stout and able to be aggressive like that, I think that goes a long way in building your roster and just, kind of taking the culture you already have and just maybe simply placing a piece in there with the carrot of, whoever is out there in the portal. Hey, you come here, you're going to fit in with this seamlessly and have a chance to make a really strong run for a national championship next year.
What was their mood after the game? I mean, you've been around, Sam, Purdue a lot. You've seen them after disappointing losses. Sometimes teams are devastated because they feel like, there was more out there. Sometimes teams, you could tell, are proud because they left it all out there, and sometimes teams are just flat out PO'd. What was Purdue's mindset and the immediacy after the loss?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a mixture of all of those. 2 years ago was the most devastating thing I've ever seen from a locker room perspective after that loss to Fairleigh Dickinson. And then last year after the national championship, it was kind of like, we got here. Next year maybe we can build off of this. I think that Purdue knew that it played almost as well as it could against Houston, but the way that it transpired in the final, I guess 2.9 seconds left a sour taste because the inbounder was wide open for to get the ball back and lay it in. That's kind of heartbreaking and tough to accept maybe in the moment. But in the locker room, a lot of guys were saying like, hey, like we played a really great game down. They were down by 10 to Houston. Nobody comes back against Houston down 10, and Purdue tied the game with one possession to go. So it really was kind of like a disappointment of it stinks that Purdue lost in this way, but also, we put up one heck of a fight versus a team that nobody thought we could beat.
Okay, finally, Sam, in terms of just the calendar, in terms of monitoring Purdue basketball and when kind of the next wave of news, if you will, comes out, you would anticipate if there's going to be – do you think there are going to be more players that are throwing their name in there and will have a better feel and idea of a timeline of what next season looks like at what point?
Well, I would not be surprised if there's a transfer announcement for an incoming player as soon as this week sometime. So that would be the first domino.
And you have one in mind with that, or you're just saying in general?
Well, there was a big man from South Dakota State on campus the last couple of days. So I'll let you do with that what you will. I think he's also going to Iowa State, which coincidentally just signed a 6'11" guy. So I don't know if you want to read the tea leaves there, but I could see that happening very soon. And then, Matt Painter said one or two players, which would lead me to believe that he's not stopping at one guy. You've got the additional roster spots, and then also you lose Brian Waddell, you lose Will Berg. Now those are open. So there's a lot of flexibility there that is pretty enticing. And I don't know if Braden Smith is involved in this process, but it's something I'm sure that you're talking to him about, like, how do you see this player working with you type things? Because ultimately, if you're trying to sway that guy to stay at your school or lead this team into the future, you probably want to have his input about how it's going to work with said players.
Sam King, Lafayette Journal and Courier, appreciate the time as always. We'll continue to look for the coverage and talk to you soon, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, guys.
So for his segment of this show, Monday's gone for him now, right?
Yeah.
Tuesday's Gone's a great tune, man. Great tune.
Freebird, yeah.
We come back. Something happened at Gamebridge Fieldhouse that I think is a great lesson for us all. And it's funny how things work because a lot of it just, for me, came full circle. I'll explain next. Such a good song, man. Kudos to Sam King for propping up Tuesday's Gone. Very underrated. Over the weekend at the Fieldhouse, Gamebridge Fieldhouse, fabulous finish in the 4A championship game. You heard Jeff Rickard from this radio station on the radio call for that broadcast of Jeffersonville defeating Fishers. Eddie Garrison, you were very capably working the sidelines for some of the IHSAA state finals, correct?
Yeah, the 1A game between Clinton Prairie and Orleans.
And you pointed out that Orleans student enrollment is?
317.
I've always found it amazing, by the way, and I do believe that it is by coincidence. I don't think that it is intentional, but the USS Indianapolis, which, of course, there is the memorial in Indianapolis for it, that was hit by a torpedo after delivering one of the atomic bombs in World War II. Of those that were left in the chilly water, there were 317 survivors. 317 also. I always found that amazing. Sharon Wilkerson is the coach of Jeffersonville, and he was on the show on Friday. And Sharon, I asked him about the fact that he had gone through a hard time of, when he was at Indiana and getting dismissed from Indiana and breaking his leg. And he mentioned in the interview on Friday that there were times, as he worded it, that he thought about writing his own ending. And I think we all know what he meant by that. At the end of the interview, and there's a reason I want to play this because it comes full circle to an extent. At the end of the interview, I asked Sharon Wilkerson what he would say to people who are going through a hard time. And Sharon Wilkerson, who became just the second man in the state of Indiana to win a state championship as a player and coach for the same school when Jeffersonville won on Saturday evening, had this to say in regards to that.
There's somebody that needs you as an example. There's somebody. And it's probably not even a family member. In fact, it's probably not even somebody that you even come into contact with. And Jake, I will tell you, man, I've gotten so many messages. I've gotten so many messages, man, from people that I've never even met. That is wishing us these blessings and this spiritual, giving us these prayers, I will say. And it's just confirmation that the way that we're looking at it is right. So for those people that are struggling, please understand that right now, that you may personally be going through a tough time, but there is somebody that needs you. There's somebody that needs to see you be who you are. And I think that is the message that I would like for everybody to give.
Now, I was thinking about that, and I got the following text. Hey, Jake, I've contacted you before. Literally, I just received this text probably 15 minutes ago. I wanted to say thanks. I love listening to you in the afternoon because it takes my mind off some stuff. I've been living at the hospital here in Indianapolis with my daughter who was shot. She has my 3 grandsons that don't frankly understand everything. You and me are about the same age, and the things you say remind me of myself. I just wanted to reach out and say thank you for what you do. And I'm not, obviously, the individual who sent me that. I'm not going to say their name. But I think Sharon's message there is an important one, and that is that I know that things are tough. You got the grandsons, your daughter. I commend you for for obviously being there and helping out. And I don't do anything. I mean, we just talk on the air for 3 hours a day. But that right there, what Sharon was talking about, is the fact that you can find a strength in knowing that there are people that see a strength in you even when you don't have it. I also wanted to mention, and I will mention this throughout the course of the next month or so, but several years ago, I was at a fundraiser that I was covering. I mean, I wasn't there raising funds. I was working in television at the time. And the Colts complex was hosting a fundraiser in town, and so I went out to the Colts complex on West 56th. This would have been in the early 2000s. And I knew it was a fundraiser for the Children's Bureau, which you hear me mention the Children's Bureau because I try to get the word out each year for their Hope for the Holidays, where they try to raise money and get gifts, sponsored kids for the holidays, for Christmas. And prior to that, my only experience with the Children's Bureau was just knowing of it in name and knowing that my aunt had been a member of the guild there. And so I'm at this event, and I'm just there because it's like, well, I got to go and try to get a soundbite from Tony Dungy or whatever it was. I'm there in a working capacity. But it was a fundraiser for the Children's Bureau, and I felt this, like, pull at my arm. And I'll never forget this. And I turned around and looked down, and it was this little girl. And she kind of looked like the girl in The Grinch That Stole Christmas, truthfully. But she looked up at me with these huge eyes, and I'll never forget this because they were eyes of both bewilderment but like a hope. And they were thankful. There was gratitude there because she was old enough. She was probably 6 years old, but she was old enough to understand that we were there the people that were there to raise money for an organization that was going to help her. And the Children's Bureau, which is now known as Firefly, it's named that because it provides light in darkness. Firefly has been around for 174 years in the state of Indiana. It serves all 92 counties, but it's based in Indianapolis. And that is the place where children, in the worst moments possible, when they are rescued from a dangerous situation or a domestic violence situation, or 3 o'clock in the morning, something happens at home and the police are there, they go and they take residence temporarily at Firefly, and they still are allowed to go to the same school so the kids don't notice, and they allow for those children to have life as normal as possible during very difficult circumstances. They also provide situational housing and counseling and resources for families that have gone through addiction or abuse or simply need hygiene products, school products, etc. It's a fabulous organization, and I've gone through and toured the facilities. I've seen the kids there. I know the impact that they have. And April is Child Abuse Awareness Month, and they are trying to do a fundraising effort to get $10,000 because they have a donor who has offered to match every dollar up to $10,000. So they're trying to raise $20,000 in 1 month to help the children of Indiana. And those kids, exactly what Sharon's talking about. You may not realize it, and it's kids you don't know, but there are those that look for you for a strength, for a guidance, for a difference. And so on my X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, I have my pinned tweet. There is a link right there where if you click on it, you can read more about Firefly and you can make a donation. And I'll mention it a couple times over the course of the month, but I believe in them and I want to help them. And that's one of the things that we're going to do here on this show over the month of April. Not every day. I'm not going to hit you over the head every day, but occasionally remind you of it. And even $1 is greatly, greatly appreciated. But I thought Sharon's message was fabulous, and I thought as a result, even though I know how much Fishers, they are fantastic. They were undefeated. They had won 43 straight, and I'm not taking anything away from the accomplishments, the work ethic, the skill set, the expertise of the kids at Fishers. I mean, I know a lot of people at that school, obviously, being from that area. But I thought it was a good story also for Sharon and Jeffersonville to win that game.
Congratulations to your mom, Jake. I know she was she's always wanted one of the wagons at the Riley
Correct.
Children's Hospital, and she finally
So
got one.
that was a pretty special deal, Eddie. Thank you. Yesterday, my mom is a preschool teacher, has been for my entire life, and the number of kids from Children's Corner Preschool that my mom had, or the number of people I know, I'm nothing more in this town than Karen Query's son. I mean, I know that. And my mom has always wanted for Christmas every year, for years, she said to my sisters and I just want a red wagon at Riley. And the way that that's done is through fundraising efforts. And not fundraising. I mean, you can yourself go and pay the money. But if you give, there's a certain amount to Riley you give, and Riley patients get a wagon. You can either get one to ride in as you are transported to where you're getting medical treatment. You can get it to put your blankets and your possessions in and carry it behind you. You can get it so that your siblings carry you around during free time and you can feel the normalcy of being a kid while at Riley Hospital. And the wagons are handmade. They're basically just like in a grocery cart corral when you enter the hospital. But each wagon has a license plate with the name of who it was that made it financially possible for that wagon to exist. And my mom has wanted that for as long as I can remember. She herself did most of the fundraising. My sisters and I helped, but my mom gets all the credit in the world. And yesterday they released the wagon with her name on it into the corral. And my mom was so emotional and so thrilled over it and took pictures of it. And it meant life to my mom to see that. So it was very cool. And then I got to see a young boy and his family come in. After my family had left when we released the wagon, I stayed a little bit later and just so happened to be in there when a family with their young boy came in, and they put him in my mom's wagon, and he rode off. And I stopped and told the family of the situation, and they were grateful. And it was very, very cool. And it's always tough to be in Riley, for sure.
I saw the family photo as well, and I must say, do you get told this a lot, that you look like your dad?
Yeah, I do get told that. Do I really?
Yeah, I see it. Your faces are identical.
Well, I'm younger than he is. Just so.
Okay. You still look like your dad.
My dad's a nice-looking guy. My dad, when I was younger, looked just like Denny Crum, by the way.
Did he have the baseball cards in the car still?
That's right. Driving around looking for cats.
Yeah.
In 1987, during the Pan Am Games, a guy came up that was convinced some hillbilly from Kentucky was convinced my dad was Denny Crum, who was the basketball coach of the Pan Am team, and like stalked my dad. Mr. Crum, can I just get your autograph? And my dad kept telling him, look, I'm not Denny Crum. The guy would not believe him until Denny Crum walked out on the floor, and then the guy's like, oh, okay, well, maybe you are just, in fact, Lloyd Query. But being Lloyd Query is certainly good enough, for sure. Mike Chappell, NFL owners' meetings are underway, and we're going to talk with Mike Chappell about that and more next. Mike Chappell's coming up shortly here. Real quick before we get to Chap, wanted to talk to Bob and Bruce. We'll begin with Bob, who called in the program. Hi, Bob. How are you?
Hey, Jake. Thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to have the opportunity to thank you personally for talking about Firefly. I've heard you mention them several different times. I have the great fortune of having a daughter that is a therapist for Firefly. She's worked for him for 3 years, and I personally know Tina that runs Firefly. And not only do they take care of a lot of the children and everything in the communities, as you well know, but Tina does an amazing job of taking care of the staff that she has. They were just recently voted one of the top 25 places to work in Indiana for 2025.
Yeah, it's a great organization, Bob. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the work your daughter does for certain because I've seen it. I'll never forget when I toured through, and, the kids were all at school, and I went into one of the kids' bedrooms, and they had two stuffed animals that were laying on the bed next to one another, and the person touring me through said that child had told them that they left the stuffed animals in the bed like that because they wanted to see what it was like to have a house where people loved each other. And again, stuff like that, it stuck with me, right? And so I felt at that point, I just felt if I have a platform until they tell me I can't do it anymore, I'm going to use it every once in a while to try to illuminate for things like that. Bruce joins us. Hi, Bruce.
Hey, how are you?
I am well, thank you. Yourself?
I'm great, thank you. I appreciate you bringing up Firefly. They're a perfect example of the power of helping others in need and the need for doing that. I know you start your campaign tomorrow to help them raise $10,000 for the match that someone is going to make. I wanted to tell you that I'd like, if you don't already have one, I'd like to be your first donor, even though we're a day before April. I'll put in $500, and I will commit another $500 from Concerts for a Cause, which I started 8 years ago to help organizations just like Firefly. And then I hope that some of my friends who listen to you regularly that come to our concerts will also make a pledge to help you get to that $10,000 this month.
Bruce, I appreciate it, man. I know the work you and I have talked before about your Concerts for a Cause and the work that you do, and I know the heart you have and the philanthropic feel that you have. And I appreciate it greatly. There's nothing more that I can say than that. Hopefully people will match your challenge, if you will, or rise to the occasion. But, every dollar counts, even if it's $1. I'm going to send you you can go to my Twitter account where you will see I have the link right there, and you can make that pledge right there, Bruce, or I can send it to you directly. But, listen, I'm most appreciative. You're a tremendous guy with an ability to put these kinds of things together as you do. And the fact that you even give like 20 minutes of your time to listen to this radio program is flattering enough, right? But I appreciate it. There's not much more I can say than that, Bruce, other than I appreciate it.
No, enough said. My pleasure, my friend. Happy to help, and thanks for what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate it. And I will get that to Bruce. Let's go. That's what I'm talking about right there. You know what I mean? Every bit helps, man. And I'm telling you, you take one walk through Firefly and you see the kids there, and right there you're like, man. And that's kind of been my place, my cause, if you will, or the place that I just believe in them. I'll simply put it as that. NFL owner meetings are underway. I do find it interesting, and I find it curious that when you look at, Shane Steichen coming out and saying, you know what, we're going to give equal reps between Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson. Joining us now on the program from Fox 59 and CBS 4 is Mike Chappell. And Chapp, I'll begin with this. I was a little surprised with Steichen coming out and saying that because I thought we knew that. Didn't we already know? If you tell us, if you sign Daniel Jones to that contract and you tell us it's going to be an open competition, it feels redundant to tell us that they're going to get equal sets in the OTAs, right?
Well, I suppose in full disclosure, both Steichen and Ballard mentioned they met with local media down in Florida at the owners' meetings. I'm not down there, but I was privy to Chris Ballard's talk. But this is in response to guys. This is the first time we've anyone's talked to these guys since they signed Jones, I believe, unless I'm just brain fading something. So no, it was just sort of the answer to the question is there's going to be open competition and we're going to share reps. So I don't know that I would read anything into it other than the fact he was just reaffirming there's going to be open competition. Chris Ballard mentioned the same thing. So I think this was just a chance sort of just to kind of get people up to speed is this is what we're doing. This is how it's going to be. And that's kind of that's how I read the quotes myself.
Chap, I'm gonna make us the two old guys at the end of the Muppets again, okay?
Okay.
So I'm asking this question 50% facetiously and 50% seriously. The NFL owners meeting. When did this become a thing? I know they've always done it, but it seems like now it's another part of the – and I commend them for it. I mean, I get it, and I know that there are important things that come out of it, but it seems like it's only been in the last handful of years that this has really become a calendar-marking talking point. Am I wrong?
No. Because back when I was at the Star, I would go occasionally, and this is back we're talking 20 years ago, in the early 2000s. I probably went to a few before then. This is generally when, not so much with the head coach or the GM, this is generally when the beat guys have a chance to catch up with the owner. That's what was always invaluable is you get a half an hour, 45 minutes with the owner. But what's incredibly invaluable now for a beat guy is having Chris Ballard, having Shane Steichen for 45 minutes an hour, and you get good stuff. Some stuff you can't use. There's stuff that's off the record that you simply can't use. It's good background. I've always thought that the owners' meetings were more important than going to the Super Bowl if you don't have a team in it. It was always high up there because of the access, and you've got access to all the coaches. Now, on the coaches and the GMs, the combine has sort of taken some of that away because
right.
in late February you get these guys. Well, this is the first chance to get these guys after free agency to where Chris talks about Tarvarius Ward and Cam Bynum and Jones. So, but it's really been important. The problem is at the owners' meetings, they hold these at resorts, and you either stay at the resorts and pay humongous costs, or you find a hotel 10 miles away and you drive in. So
yeah, the Howard Johnsons, right? You find the Howard Johnsons couple, 10, 15 minutes away, and you're good, right?
And I'm guessing that's what James Boyd and Stephen Holder and Joel do when they go there. So, but it's always been invaluable. I would put owners' meetings first and the combine second, as far as access to your team, to the people who run your team. So it's always been important, and then too when you're there, they're talking about the push, and they'll talk about 18 games, and you'll have access to Roger Goodell at his post owners meetings press conference, which is generally pretty dull because he talks a lot and doesn't say anything. But it's always been important. It really has been important for at least 2 decades. Now,
did you ever stay in the owner's hotel? Be honest. I mean, like back in the.
Oh yeah, we did. Yeah, because when I was at the Star, I'd say, we really need to be there because you just sold it, and then when they're charging the $500 and $600 a night, you think, I really can't.
Back to the Hojo.
I really can't push this.
Okay, fair enough.
Right.
For those that don't know, Mike Chappell is our guest, by the way. At the NFL owners meeting, the one thing that has come out so far is that, in fact, the discussion or the proposals that the tush push, for those that don't know what that is, that's when you have like a goal line stand and being able to then push a quarterback or a running back, across the line. And they are now going to take a look at the legality of that. Correct, Chap?
Yeah, it's the one play that apparently only the Eagles can master because nobody else can do it. And I sort of get it, but I mean, defend it or just don't get in 3rd and 4th and 1. So yeah, it's sort of ganging up on a team that's found a way to run a play that no one else can run and no one else can defend. So Yeah, I'm sort of torn on that. So, good for Philly that they found it. Stop it. Find a way to stop it.
What other things do we anticipate coming out of this? And furthermore, I guess I know I ask you this every couple of months, Chap, but you are as good as anybody at being able to relay this kind of information, because I believe you would have it above anybody else, and that is, what is the overall health status of Jim Irsay, which I know is a continued journey for him?
I think he's doing well. I'm not certain if he's at the owners' meetings. I don't think he is, but it's more of a result of him still working on his mobility, getting his physical strength back. He underwent a pretty significant surgery, and it's really taken him time to get back. But I think he's as much as I can say for certain, he is running the team. No one should have any doubt in that. This is just a matter of getting himself back physically to where he can be. This is a proud guy, and he's a very active guy. And I know he wants to get back to where he can do the things he's always done.
Mike Chappell, our guest. Chap, let's go back to the quarterbacking competition. Do you believe, what percent of the Daniel Jones signing, the salary, and this continued, vociferous nature of competition, what percentage of that is because they truly want to see what Daniel Jones has and feel like maybe there's something untapped there? And what percent of that is they feel the untapped is Anthony Richardson, and this is the means to try to tap that open?
I think it's 100% on Anthony Richardson. I mean, because they don't know. Going into year 3, they don't know. If they had a good grasp on Anthony Richardson and felt really good going forward, there would be no Daniel Jones. There would be a backup, but it wouldn't be of his level. And that's reflected in the $14 million. It can be $17 million contract he got. I mean, that's certainly not starter money, but it's heavy backup money. If they had a better grip on what they had with Anthony Richardson, this would not have happened. But the situation forced their hand. The missing 17 games with injury, 2 more with the benching, which I've said bothers me as much as anything, that you had to bench him to get his attention. And the fact is, I'm writing something from Ballard's talk today. I'm just typing that he's completed 50.6% of his passes in 2 years. That's worse than the league over those 2 years. And the next one above him is 60.1. So he's 10 points off the next worst guy. So this is all about not knowing what you've got, and that's simply not a good situation to be in. It's not going into your 3rd year, and we've gone through this. It's from the injuries, missing 17 games, and the shoulder surgery last year robbed him of all of last season, off season, to prepare as a quarterback, and he's rehabbing, not working on his mechanics. That was a huge setback. So this off season, I hope he's attacking it with the necessary urgency that should be there. When they sign Daniel Jones, if that doesn't get your attention as Anthony Richardson, then you're the wrong guy. And if Richardson does not beat Jones out, he was the wrong guy. I don't know how much more simple.
Chap, could they realistically, let's just say for the sake of discussion, okay? Let's say that Richardson's a bust. Let's say that they determine that the footwork never comes around, the completion percentage never comes around. That doesn't change the fact that he is still an elite athlete, and he is a guy that can move the chains in different ways. Maybe it can't happen here because sometimes you are what you are brought in to initially be. But is there still a place for him in the NFL that doesn't involve throwing the football but does involve moving it somehow?
Boy, we put it like that, I'd say no. He's a quarterback. He's not a tight end. He's not a running back. I don't know that he can be who's the guy in New Orleans?
Hill?
The tight end. Taysom Hill. I suppose if you wanted to have that somewhere, but he's a quarterback. He's a quarterback, and he's got to be able to complete, fill in the blank 58%. I've kind of settled on 58% as my bar. And if he does that, we're fine. If he can continue to throw the deep ball and complete 58% of his passes and hit Josh Downs, went from here to there, then they're fine. Anything about that is gravy. But I don't think if he doesn't show the completion percentage improvement that he has to show, I don't know how you play quarterback in this league doing that. So failing that, I don't know where he goes. Now, one thing Ballard said is this, however this plays out, this isn't the end. This wouldn't be the end of Anthony Richardson, but it might be here. If he loses the job to Jones and Jones takes whatever Jones does, I don't know how you go back to Richardson. I really don't. So that's why I say there's he needs to win this competition for so many reasons, and if he doesn't, there's going to be hell to pay.
To me, Daniel Jones. You tell me if I'm wrong here. To me, Daniel Jones is a more polished version of a more polished version of 85% of what you think the ceiling is for Richardson.
Probably. Minus the deep ball, because the one thing Jones hasn't done is really throw the deep ball that well, but he runs. You're in for almost 800 yards in their playoff season. It's funny that the Colts have got two quarterbacks who have set franchise records for rushing yards in a season with the Giants and the Colts. But no, he's further along, and I would say that of these two quarterbacks, Daniel Jones has a chance to be the next Sam Darnold or Geno Smith or Baker Mayfield, because he was put in a bad situation with the Giants, and he had a role in it not working out. But we've seen 3 or 4 quarterbacks recently get another chance to go somewhere, and it's worked. Now, we'll see about Sam Darnold. I mean, he was not very good for many years and was really good this year, and then we'll see. But we've talked. I think one of the worst case scenarios is for Jones to win the job, and then have a good season. Then what do you do?
Right. Totally. I totally agree. And here's the thing:
re-up Jones.
A Daniel Jones good season. Chap, let's be realistic here. If Daniel Jones wins the job and is a competent or even above competent, let's say that he finds something more consistency than he had in New York,
right,
then what are you looking at? 11-6, 10-7?
10-7. I mean, let's not go
right.
Sam Darnold crazy.
You're drafting 18th, right?
See, that's you're still in purgatory as far as what do you do? You can't. I mean, you'd have to be crazy to then give Jones another contract like the Giants did. Was it $40 million a year, whatever it was, based on one season? And then you got Richardson here, and you're not in position to get a quarterback next year. Yeah, it's just that's why I say I keep defaulting on the fact that Richardson needs to be the guy to show you significant development, whatever that means. I don't know. Playoffs, I don't know. Stay on the field for 15 games, because failing that, I don't know where you go. I just don't know what the future is. If he isn't part of the future, I don't know what that future is going to look like.
Chap, can you summarize other things that Chris Ballard, not Anthony Richardson related, said in terms of his talk today?
He was he virtually targeted Bynum and Charvarius Ward because they needed veterans in the secondary. And one thing that he mentioned this in January, to where his approach to free agency, that he had to kind of close deals. And it came out with when Ward talked with, I think it was on JMV show, where he mentioned that he thought he was going to New Orleans. He thought New Orleans had the deal done, and then the Colts came back and closed the deal. That's a case of Ballard closing the deal when initially maybe it wasn't closed, and they've missed some players in the past for whatever reasons for not closing the deal. So it was very, very important to get those two guys. Those really kind of struck me with that. Offensive line, he knows they've got it. He's very bullish on their offensive line. He thinks these guys are going to come together pretty good, and he was very, very talked very highly of Ryan Kelly and all that he meant here as a player, as a person. But he thinks that they got the right people in place, and in Braden Smith being back is really huge. So those were the main things. But he probably talked for 45 minutes. In the first 20 were Richardson. It was Richardson, because again, it's the quarterback. It's if you don't get the quarterback right, here's where you are. And look at all the other teams. Cleveland. Look at all these other teams that are just floundering because they don't know what they've got at quarterback. If Richardson's a guy and he shows you what he needs to show you, this is not a bad team. It's got some good pieces in place. So defense could be better. You've got Jonathan Taylor, who's still a top 3 running back in the league. You're not asking the quarterback to be Superman. You want some Superman moments, but this team is good enough that if the quarterback does his job and a little bit more, this could be a playoff team.
Okay, Chap. Lastly, most importantly, Auburn, Florida, Duke, Houston. Who you got?
I've taken Houston. My bracket, I got 3 of the 4. The problem is when I did brackets with my son and grandsons, I had St. John's going to the final game, so I'm screwed. They bombed the one bracket, but I don't know who beats Duke, but I don't know who scores on Houston. Holy smokes!
Yeah, their defense is
it's
stifling.
It's going to be a great Final Four.
Yeah, their defense absolutely shuts you down. Now here's
there's no open shots. There's no open shots. You got to fight for everything. One of the great quotes I saw is with Matt Painter going into the Houston game, that he told his players, don't pass up a shot early in the possession because you might not get another one. Oh, that was a great observation by him, because how many times if you pass something up, that's the best thing you were going to get.
All right, here's my favorite trivia question, Chap. You ready? I'll put you on the spot here. If Houston were to win it, not saying they do, but if Houston were to win it, they would – right now Houston has the record for the most Final Four appearances without a national championship.
Ooh.
If they were to win it, that dubious title is then shared by what 2 schools?
Purdue?
Who is sitting in waiting?
I'm guessing Purdue.
No.
Okay. Then, see, I'm stupid.
Same conference for one of them.
Michigan?
No, Michigan's won it. They won it in '89.
God. Oh, with who was the guard?
Well, Glenn Rice was the guy that went nuts. Ramil Robinson hit 2 free throws to win it for him, but Glenn Rice scored more points in the '89 tournament than any player in tournament history.
I'm flailing this, so tell me.
Illinois, believe it or not.
Oh.
And Oklahoma. Those 2 have been to 5 Final Fours. Houston has just made, I believe, their 7th. And Houston has never won the national title. They went 3 times with Elvin Hayes, twice with Elijah Wan. No, 3 times with Elijah Wan. And then once with Kelvin Sampson. So this is actually their 8th, I guess. But they've never won it.
And people still hate Kelvin Sampson.
Yeah, Kelvin Sampson was so arrogant when he was here.
I know. It appears that he has matured at his age, but what he's got those guys, how he's got those guys playing, it's unbelievable.
They're you know what they are? They're St. John's with offense. That's what they are. I mean, St. John's the same way. But all right, Chap, we'll see what happens with it. We'll talk to you next week. Appreciate it as always.
Great talking with you. Later.
All right, Mike Chappell joining us. Speaking of college basketball, Indiana in the terms of how they might look differently next year. Jeff Rabjohns knows it as well as anybody. He joins us next. You happen to visit the residence of Jeff Rabjohns anytime in the next couple of weeks, you might be able to hear this on vinyl because it's on its way back from the record store in Indy, California. Jeff Rabjohns' request was Prince and the Revolution, Purple Rain. He joins us now on the always busy guest line to talk about Indiana and a roster right now that was the entire roster. I just read it off to you. Jeff, I'll begin with this, and I appreciate the time, as always, from Peegs.com. What players, and I realize that the reason Indiana's roster is void right now is because players have entered the transfer portal, but will some of them actually boomerang and come back, or is this a complete rebuild?
The expectation right now is pretty much a complete rebuild. The two players that are confirmed are Tucker DeVries, Coach DeVries' son, who was an outstanding player for him at Drake, and then first 8 games last year at West Virginia, got injured, is going to get a redshirt year. So he'll be one of the players. Trent Sisley, an outstanding prospect, 4-star power forward, originally from Heritage Hills, played his senior year at Montverde, will actually be playing up at Hamilton Southeastern this weekend in the Chipotle Nationals with Montverde. Those are the two guys on the roster. The guys who went into the portal, the expectation at this point in time, understanding things can change, but the expectation is they end up elsewhere. So it is going to be a pretty much a fresh start. It'll be pretty much a complete roster rebuild.
And I guess dumb question here, Jeff, but when you say the expectation is they will end up elsewhere, I would assume that DeVries met with each particular player. Was that players, maybe the offense or whatever system, he has a history of being able to rebuild. He did it at Drake. He did it at West Virginia. So I trust him in that regard. But was it just that players thought, you know what, I'm good going elsewhere, and they just didn't mesh? What is the reason that not one of them said, you know what, I'm in, let's go?
I mean, it's a combination of a lot of things. They have to fit with the new coach. They might just want a fresh start themselves. They were on an Indiana team that, had a big NIL payroll and didn't even make the NCAA tournament. Some of them were there for a couple of years, didn't make the NCAA tournament each of the last 2 years. So it's a variety of things usually, and it's a combination of different things, and each individual person has whatever it is that they want. And sometimes guys maybe got a monster NIL deal and maybe didn't perform up to what you would need performance-wise for those dollars. And, Indiana has a big, robust NIL, and they're going to do above the planning to do above the industry average for revenue sharing, which is expected to come into play this coming year with the House versus NCAA settlement expected to come here on April 7th. But sometimes, schools can say, hey, you got paid X last year. You didn't do much. Can't pay that this coming year. And they may decide, them, their parents, their agents, whatever, may decide, hey, we're going to go get what we can in the open market too. And that's part of it. I mean, the players wanted to get paid, which I understand. They're the reasons people are watching, and the TV dollars are what they are. But institutions get to make decisions too. They get to decide, hey, here's what you're going to get paid. So I think that's one of the things that some players are starting to realize, that like NIL deals are year to year, and there's no guarantee next year you get what you got this year. So it's a combination of things.
When you look, Jeff Rabjohns, Peegs.com is our guest. Let's go back to the hire itself, because we haven't had a chance to talk to you publicly, since then, on this show at least. So did Indiana get their guy? In other words, I think Brad Stevens, we all know, would have been their first call, and maybe Dusty May, there was discussion there. But outside of that, was this priority number one for them?
Well, here's what I know so far, and some of the stuff Scott Dolson's probably going to forever keep in his back pocket, but I know they had conversations with a number of different coaches, and I know that the search firm had conversations with either coaches or the agents of coaches. Hey, would you be interested in Indiana? If so, What would you need to get paid? What would be your plan? Why do you think you could do it? Or if you're talking to an agent, why do you think your guy could do it? And so there was research done. I guess step one, Scott kind of did the same thing he did with the Curt Cignetti hire. He formulated a list of criteria. And then in conjunction with the search firm said, okay, let's see who fits our criteria. We want a clear identity. We want modern offense. We want, somebody who teaches defense. We want somebody who puts shooters on the floor. And then the next step is find people who fit that criteria and then try to find out who of the people who fit is the guy you want. And from what I've been told so far, yes, Darren DeVries was the guy that they settled on. This is the guy who can put a modern offense on the floor, who has a track record of elevating programs. And that's another thing that's interesting to look at when you evaluate coaches. One of the things is to look at what did they do when they were at a place versus like the recent norm or historical norm of that place. For example, with Darren DeVries, he was at Drake, had 6 20-win seasons. Prior to DeVries being there, Drake in its history had 1 20-win season. So that's elevated program. He goes to West Virginia. The year before he gets there, they won 9 games. The year he's there, they win 19. So there's a 10-game improvement. And that was a 10-game improvement, even though arguably their best overall player, his son, Tucker DeVries, was injured after 8 games. So they were shorthanded. Still, 10-win improvement. So that's elevating a program. What other things did they do? Did they compete with consistency in losses? Were they getting blown out or were they competitive? Well, he was very competitive. They won at Kansas. They beat number 2 Iowa State. There were other games when they played nationally ranked teams that they lost by 4, 5, 6, 7 points. So competitive game, not getting blown out by 25 points or whatever. So I think those are some of the things that Indiana really kind of dialed in on as far as, okay, what do we think makes somebody who has a really good chance for success? Again, there's no guarantees, but those are some of the factors that Scott Dolson, Stephen Harper, and and John Decker, he deserves a lot of credit. He was one who did a lot of the digging and in the analytical details. He did a fantastic job. But those are some of the factors they looked at.
The fact that Darren DeVries was at the IHSAA basketball state finals this weekend at Cambridge, active work he was doing, or that was symbolic? I mean, it's cool, don't get me wrong, but was he there just kind of to show face, or was he there getting to work? Both.
There were some guys to look at. Des Briscoe from Crispus Attucks is a 4-star, 6'8" power forward who was committed to Iowa, reopened his recruitment. Obviously, with Fishers, you've got Jason Gardner Jr., who is, top 25-ish, somewhere around there, player in the 2027 class. So some of it was work, put eyes on players. Some of it was send a message. Hey, I'm the new guy. I'm going to recruit Indiana high school players. I just got the job, and I'm here at the state finals. So I think it was 2 things, but I think it was really good. I mean, it's sort of throwing up a flag, if you will, that, hey, I'm the new guy, and I'm here, and we're going to recruit your players. And I want you to know that I'm going to show up. And I think that's both parts of it, scouting some players in person, good. Showing up to the state finals, week 1 on the job, I thought it was a very smart move. It was a very, very, very smart move.
Last year's Indiana Mr. Basketball, Flory Badunga, went to Kansas. I think Bill Self at one point said that he had the highest ceiling on the Kansas roster. He's now put himself into the transfer portal. Where does he end up?
I don't know exactly yet. That would make, there's a lot involved there. We'll see. His production last year was okay, around 6.5 rebounds, a couple of block shots. But if you're going to pay somebody monster NIL, do you pay an athletic center on the come, or do you maybe go a little more with guards and wings in today's college basketball? We'll see. You hear a little bit about Auburn. You hear about some other schools in the South. So we'll see where that one goes. But that one, and I know sometimes people look at it and go, oh, kid from Kokomo, Indiana, new coach at Indiana, he's coming home to Indiana. I'd be careful about getting too far over my skis on making hard A to B to C assumptions just yet. Again, this is the transfer portal. Things sometimes change by the hour. There was a kid just a couple days ago who told a certain school he was coming. And then they added somebody else in the transfer portal, and he was like, well, okay, never mind. I'm still open. And that happened within the span of about 80 minutes. So weird things can happen. But right now, I'd probably keep my focus more toward guys who are either on campus or coming on campus here in the next couple of days for the moment.
Indiana has, if I'm not mistaken, Jeff Rabjohns, Peaks.com, our guest, they have visitors on campus right now, correct?
Ryan Conwell, originally from Indianapolis Pike, was at Xavier last year, is visiting today. Obviously, that's the guy you look at and say, okay, production, as far as points go, 16.5 points per game, really good positional size, 6'4", and 41% from three-point range. That's the kind of player that Darren DeVries really likes. Josh Dix, the Iowa point guard, or the Iowa shooting guard / wing, he's coming in tonight. He'll be there tonight and tomorrow. Another guy you look at, 14.4 points per game, 42% from three-point range. And then later in the week, they have Connor Enright, point guard from DePaul, coming in. The biggest thing that stands out about Connor Enright, his assist rate was 37.5. That was number 6 in the country in assist rate for Power 4 players. So that's somebody who can handle the ball. And obviously, Connor Enright played for Darren DeVries at Drake, so there's a connection. There's a player that a coach looks at and says, yeah, I know what you're about. There's a player who looks at the coach and says, I know what you're about. We know we fit together. So that's kind of one of the pieces of the puzzle with point guard Connor Enright.
Where do things stand with Luke Goody in terms of getting a medical red shirt, having another year left, and if so, if it would be at Indiana?
If he gets another year, he has every intention of it being at Indiana. His whole goal of applying for an additional year is to have another year at Indiana. The process right now, he's put in the paperwork to apply for a waiver. There's a question of whether or not he's going to get it initially or whether it may have to be, a little more of a legal type battle, because the year at Illinois, when he only played in 10 games, he came back after his injury and played. So you can't make the automatic argument that the injury ended his season because he came back and played. Now, some people look at it and say, well, the NCAA is getting its butt kicked left and right in court. Are they really going to want a legal fight that they might lose? That's something to keep an eye on. But the process has been started, and it's probably going to be well into April before they get an initial response. And even if it's denied, his plan is to get a lawyer and fight for another year at Indiana.
Jeff, lastly, I'd be curious your thoughts on this. Jeff Rabjohns, our guest. You've covered this as closely as anybody, and in particular the evolution that you just spoke of college basketball with NIL, portal, etc. It's a popular talking point that, the NCAA tournament's dead now. We're never going to see Northern Iowa, and, these schools slay the dragon ever again. There were 8 games in this tournament, 8 total, where the lower seed won. 8 total games. Are you buying into the notion that this is how it's going to be now? And kudos to the seeding committee, because they have 4 number ones, and obviously the Elite 8 were the teams that were supposed to be there. Is this how it's going to be moving forward, or is this something that is still a pattern anomaly?
I think there's a chance that this becomes more normal because with NIL and the transfer portal, it's difficult for mid-majors to keep guys for 4 years and get old, and maybe their guys aren't on paper as talented as some Power 4 teams, but they're 21, 22, sometimes 23 years old, and they played together for 3 or 4 years, and they really know their system, and they can just out-execute a team that may be more talented, but maybe younger or just hasn't been together very long. So I think we're going to see more of a consolidation of top-tier talent in the Power 4 schools. And I think we're going to see more NCAA tournaments like this. I love the Cinderellas. I think we all love the Cinderellas. I think Cinderellas the first weekend are part of what
we
makes
all love them for a week,
weekend.
right?
Yeah, but they're
right.
part of what makes the first weekend magical. And the teams the Valparaisos, the Bryce Drew shots, the just, Oakland last year, taking out Kentucky. I think it's going to be difficult for those things to happen. But on the flip side, I think one thing we're seeing is better basketball advancing. You look at the 4 teams that are in the Final Four. Not only are they number 1 seeds, but they are all top 10 in adjusted offensive efficiency. In fact, Duke, Florida, and Auburn, 1, 2, 3 in the country in adjusted offensive efficiency. Houston's 9th in the country in adjusted offensive efficiency. So we're seeing, first of all, we've seen this for a number of years now. Nerds like me study the analytics and make charts. Like, good offense has been beating good defense with a higher and higher frequency in the NCAA tournament anyway for a little over a decade now. But right now we're seeing you still have to defend. Defense is still certainly a piece of it, but you can't go on a long run without really talented offense. Dan Hurley, even when he was doing his media tour last year, said, you pretty much have to have a high-powered offense to win 6 games in the NCAA tournament anymore. And I think he's right. So I think that's the negative is Cinderellas might be less frequent. The positive side is we're seeing really, really good basketball advance. And the 4 teams that are in the Final Four, no, there's no Cinderella-type magic. There's no George Mason. There's no Butler. And, yeah, we all love that, and it's a great story. But we are seeing really, really good basketball. The 4 teams in the Final Four all are just fantastic on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, I was going to say defensively in particular, right, Jeff? I mean, let's be real, man. Houston in particular, but, kind Auburn. I mean, they guard the heck out of you, man. I mean,
they do, and that's another thing. When you kind of consolidate some talent, you end up very few. I don't know if any of the Final Four teams really have a starter who you have to quote hide unquote on defense. They've got guys who really know how to defend. They, Kelvin Sampson's defense is just unbelievable. I mean, they suffocated poor Michigan State. I mean, they just, that was put them in a box and leave them there. So yeah, they're really good. But when you get guys, to stay, or you get guys like Cooper Flagg who are just phenomenal, or like some of the guards and wings that Auburn has. I remember when IU went down to Atlanta last year and played Auburn. It was like, whoa.
Yeah,
exactly. Those guys are. And the other thing with like Houston, it's like the 5 starters, like, ignore height. Look at length. I think it's like 6'10", 6'11", 7 foot, 7'2", and 7'3". It's like you don't grab rebounds with the top of your head. You get out there and get wide, man. It gets really difficult for offenses to create space.
Driving to the lane against Houston or Auburn is like trying to drive through a car wash when the cycles are spinning, right? It's just like there's stuff like coming from every angle, man. Jeff, appreciate it. Peaks.com, where you can continue to read about Indiana's offseason as they put a roster together, and Rabjohns will have all of the coverage of it. Appreciate it as always.
Take care, my friend. Talk to you.
Jeff Rabjohns joining us on the program. Yeah, man, the length all the way around, and I always kind of laughed at the buzzword length, but length is there. Now, the Sacramento Kings may not have the length inside that they normally expect when they take on the Pacers tonight. I'll explain, and Jeremiah Johnson will join us just a few. Just by reminding ourselves what we teased, right?
That's right.
Let's go.
Producer fault. Error.
Pacers in action tonight at the Fieldhouse, taking on the Sacramento Kings. Did I ever tell you that at one time I was kind of a subtle Sacramento Kings fan?
No, I don't think so. Back in the Jason Williams days?
No, well before that. This would have been, I'm trying to think of, like, you would think that I would remember who all was on their roster. When I was in college and the Pacers were just, my buddy Jeff Hester and I were huge Pacer fans, obviously, but we decided that we needed a West Coast team to follow as well. And we were like kind of like hipsters before hipsters. So we picked the Sacramento Kings. And back in those days, you had to have satellite coordinates to watch a satellite, like to dial in games. And we picked the Sacramento Kings. We're like, they're kind of like the Pacers. Same size city. Like, let's just go and see what they're all about and, like, watch them. So we bought Kings T-shirts and then went and did the whole deal and started watching games at Yogi's in Broderpool. Walt Williams was with them. Mitch Richmond was with them. They were very, like, middle tier, but they were kind of fun to watch. But Domas Sabonis is with them now, and he is obviously, anytime you're going to face him, a player that you have to be aware of. But, Eddie, that may not be the case tonight, correct?
No, he's healthy, Jake. I got my timeline mixed up when we were talking about it earlier. He's been back for, I think, the last week now, but he had been dealing with an ankle injury.
But he's been day-to-day, right?
Yeah, he's been dealing with an ankle issue, but he doesn't appear to be on the injury report for tonight's game, so all good to go there for Mr. Sabonis.
Because the thing you have to worry about or consider is the possibility that, if they have when is their next game? Are they on a back-to-back? Whenever you have a team from the coast, you always wonder if they don't squeeze two games in the region close to one another, and so therefore it's a back-to-back for them.
They were in Orlando on Saturday night.
Okay, so probably good then if they don't play tomorrow night. Because sometimes on a they may rest him if it's a back-to-back is simply my point. But this is for Indiana.
They're
the
off
Pacers.
tomorrow.
Okay, the Pacers, they are in a very, very good position, and kudos to the Pacers for it. I know that obviously that game against Oklahoma City got away from them pretty quickly, but, if you were looking at a silver lining in that, it's that, okay, you kind of got a chance to rest some guys or spell guys a little bit. Johnny Furphy's been reassigned back to the G League, but that's just a back-and-forth deal. The situation they're in right now in terms of the standings, I mean, it is almost – I hate to jinx anything. It seems at this point a definitive that they're going to be in the 4-5 game.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like that's me knocking on wood. It looks like they will have the home court in that. What's interesting is it's almost a certainty at this point, it would appear, with a half a dozen games left, that it's going to be Detroit and not Milwaukee. Now, question is, Eddie, would you rather face Detroit or Milwaukee?
I would rather face Milwaukee.
I would agree with that because they're banged up. They seem to be kind of backpedaling a little bit, and Detroit reminds me of, the year ago Pacers, I guess you'd say, but we've seen this with some Pacer teams where they're just young and dumb enough to not know any different and can not know they're not supposed to be there. They don't know they're not supposed to be there, and it's dangerous. And they feel like they could be a little bit dangerous.
I said this last week. I just think from a matchup standpoint, the Pacers offense matches up better with the Milwaukee defense than it does with the Detroit defense. Because I think Detroit's got guys that can counter the Pacers and make life a little difficult for them. But I don't think Milwaukee does, and that's why Indiana has had success the last two seasons against the Bucks, because besides this year where they go, I think they were 1-3 against Milwaukee, and large part of that is they were never healthy against Milwaukee outside that last matchup, and the last two matchups against Milwaukee were on the second nights of back-to-back, so it's just like a little bit of a scheduling fluke there. But I think Indiana has a better chance to succeed because Milwaukee doesn't have a ton of guys that can move up and down the floor with relative ease outside of Giannis.
No, you're right. Well, and even Giannis, half the time it looks labored, right?
Prince is a good player. I like him for Milwaukee, but They just don't have the speed that can defend Indiana in transition, and then on offense with how they want to play that chaotic nature of basketball where the ball's always moving, the players are always moving. So that's why I would prefer to face Milwaukee, but they've got to make some hay.
You know who's an expert on their team? Scott McLaughlin, the IndyCar driver that drives for Roger Penske and may win the Indy 500 this year, by the way. He's a diehard New York Knicks fan. And I was talking to him at Thermal Club, and I mean, he like broke it down like serious scouting report on the Knicks. He thinks the Knicks last year are better than this year's team, even though they're 20 games over. They're third in the East. He thinks that Karl Anthony Towns, while he's a good player, and he would take that over Julius Randle, he said, but he thinks that acquiring him by giving up DiVincenzo was a huge loss for them.
Yeah.
And that they're going to basically hit the wall, which is not an uncommon narrative when it comes to talking about New York, is that Tom Thibodeau could have his team hit the wall.
Didn't we talk to him last year after the Pacers beat the Knicks? Or was it while they were playing the Knicks?
They were playing the Knicks. Yeah, he won the poll during the Pacers-Knicks series. And you know what? You might be right. He may have been saying, it might have been right after. And he said, hey, now I'll root for the Pacers now. Jeremiah Johnson will be on the television call, one of those for tonight's game between the Pacers and Kings. Joins us next. until I was fortunate enough to go there and went through their Music Hall of Fame, you could have given me 50 guesses on where this band was from, and Dublin, Ireland would have been the 51st guess I came up with. Doesn't this just sound... First off, the beginning of that song sounds just like Detroit Rock City by Kiss. Speaking of Detroit Rock City, they were, and once again, now they weren't at home, so it didn't feel totally reminiscent, but the Pistons, once again, involved in a fight. Bunch of suspensions for that, and it looks like a fait accompli that the Pacers and Pistons may face each other in the first round of the playoffs. I mean, a lot of basketball still to be played somewhat, and knock on wood, you don't want to put anything in stone because you never know what could happen. But right now the Pacers, as I mentioned, game and a half up on Detroit for that 4th seed, and then Milwaukee is a game and a half behind Detroit. So it looks like it's going to be Pacers-Pistons. But tonight it's Pacers and Kings. And Jeremiah Johnson will be, of course, working it for the FanDuel Television Network along with Eddie Gill, Quinn Buckner, and Chris Denari. He joins us on the always busy guest line. JJ, let's begin with the health status for the Pacers. Anybody that will not be on the floor tonight?
Yeah, Benedict Mathurin will miss his second game with calf soreness. I did see him warming up in Oklahoma City doing the pregame shooting routine, and he was working up a pretty good sweat. So I don't anticipate it being a long-term situation. Rick Carlisle said Saturday he hopes it's a day-to-day type of thing, but he is not available. And just recently came out that Miles Turner is actually out due to illness. So that was a late add to the injury report. Those will be the two main rotation players that the Pacers will not have. And I heard you mentioning Sabonis and the other Kings. Their report's relatively clean, and the game, while it is important to the Pacers, it's vitally important to the Kings. So I don't anticipate Sacramento having any kind of rest situations over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, Sacramento right now sits 10th in the West, so they're 10. And you know what's funny, JJ? And I know that not all things are created equal. If Sacramento was in the East, I mean, they'd be. Their record, they'd be right there. They'd be solidly in the playoffs, right? But that West is loaded, no question. Although it would be very weird if Sacramento was in the East because they're in the West, right?
Kind of like Oregon being in the Big Ten, though.
That's true, man. It's totally bizarre, right? All right, let's begin with this. If you take a look at the ebb and flows of the year, and I know that the Pacers have not been healthy at all times, but are they – right now and I know the game in Oklahoma City notwithstanding, but if you look in like, let's say, a 10-game vacuum, are they playing right now? Are they clicking at their best, or have they had other times in the season where they were playing better basketball?
I would say they're pretty close to playing their best, and the reason I would say that, there was a stretch in mid-December. I think they had won some crazy amount of road games, and even January, the month that Rick Carlisle was Eastern Conference Coach of the Month, and Andrew Nembhard was Eastern Conference Defensive Player of the Month. The good thing about that month is with that trip to Paris, there weren't as many games, and there were no back-to-back. So that is beneficial to this team to have rest opportunities to be at their best. But they've won 8 of 11. And for me to say right now they're playing at their best, the real reason I would say it is because Tyrese Halliburton is playing at his best. And it's not just a week or 2 weeks. You can do some of the statistical analysis since the All-Star break, but you could even go back to maybe even the start of the new year. I mean, the numbers he is putting up, the control he seems to have for the game is very reminiscent of the way he started last season. So if you would put, pre-All-Star break last season with post-All-Star break this season, you'd have one of the best seasons of all time, and you're still having a case that can be made for him to be an All-NBA, maybe third-team All-NBA selection for someone that did not even make the All-Star team, which is, very unusual. So the best of Tyrese Halliburton means the best of the Pacers, and that's why I think they're probably at their best this season over the last 2 to 3 weeks.
When Halliburton's able to flip that switch, JJ, and I mean, and it is almost like he can flip a switch, is it in fact health, or is it a confidence or just an understanding of aggression for him?
I think it's been a little bit of a combination this season. Health was we'll never really know the start of the season how healthy he was. He ended last playoffs injured, and they said he tweaked something in the Olympic experience and while he participated in training camp and was available on opening night. I don't think he was 100%. So health to me, affected some of the confidence, and it really took away one aspect of his game. I don't think he was as comfortable attacking the basket early in the season. And if you don't have that threat, then it's harder to also be able to knock down that step back three that he's so good at, or the sidestep 3-point shot. So I think they're related. The other thing is you've had so many teams that understand the Pacers. To stop the Pacers or to slow them down, you take the ball out of his hands. And you even saw the start of the Oklahoma City game. While he was able to knock down some shots early, you saw the respect that they had for him, and that Lou Dort was shadowing him all over the court. And more teams did that in the beginning of the season, and they especially did it during that stretch when Andrew Nembhard was injured. I mean, that was not an insignificant development for Tyrese Halliburton's start to the season. When you have Andrew Nembhard available, I think other teams are not as they're not as interested in just selling out to completely stop Tyrese Halliburton because there's another quality playmaker, someone that's going to be on the court for more time than, let's say, what TJ McConnell's playing right now. So a lot of things went into it, but I do, it when you see it, and it's pretty clear right now you're seeing the best of Tyrese Halliburton.
Jeremiah Johnson, our guest, of course, works sidelines pre- and post-game for the FanDuel television network broadcast of the Pacer games. I think I said that correctly. But, obviously you've seen every team in the league. If the NBA made a rule where a team going into the playoffs can take one player off any roster to complement their roster and be a final piece for them. Now, I'm not talking about going out and getting Steph Curry or going out and getting Giannis. I mean, that's an obvious. But give me a player in the league, Jeremiah, that you've looked at and you've said that player's skill set is the missing piece for Indiana. That in terms of a player and what they do and what they bring to the table is a piece that Indiana could – and I'm not saying to acquire. You get what I'm saying, though, just to illustrate the area that is the last piece for Indiana. What player would look like the piece they would need?
Well, for so many years, I was thinking that they were short on that 3-and-D type of player, maybe the Paul George type of wing, and then I was really concerned when you would play against, let's say guys like Paul George or guys like Kevin Durant. Did you have someone that could match up with them? I think that Aaron Nesmith and even Benedict Mathurin, when he plays that position, they have increased what the Pacers are capable of on the wing, and in terms of defensively, the Pacers are a lot better, even though I think some outside of Indiana are slow to recognize the numbers. They're a better defensive team than they've been. The area that I'm still kind of concerned with would be rebounding, and so I'm not sure that it would be a perfect fit for the Pacers on maybe the offensive end of the floor, but let's say Isaiah Hartenstein, who the Pacers just played, so he's fresh in my mind. The rebounding that he brings is something I'm still concerned with. I mean, I'll even go back to, the college games over the weekend that I watched. How many of those games turned on, those better teams or the higher-seeded teams getting offensive rebounds and crashing the glass with such ferocity? I mean, Purdue maybe wins that game or at least goes to overtime if they're just able to get one or two of those defensive rebounds. And that's been a little bit of an issue for the Pacers. So I'm still a little concerned that can they, in a tie game or when you're up by 2, can they secure all of those defensive rebounds? So that's probably the kind of player without, going down the rosters and saying, okay, let's go get that guy or let's go get that guy. You got to have length, and the Pacers, I think they do have that, but I'm not sure that they always have, pound for pound, the best rebounding starting 5 against some of the teams they'll be playing against.
JJ, you ever watch that show, The Amazing Race? It's been around forever.
Yeah, I watched it a little bit. It's been a while, though.
So I like it because these teams, they get to travel.
Were you going to be on it at one point? I thought you were long ago. Were you and
yes.
You and the little fella?
No, zero chance. No, listen. Zero chance that I would do that with Derek Schultz, right?
Oh, I thought you were going to. That would have been must-see TV.
No, listen, number one, I mean, it goes without saying, we'd make it 2 legs. Well, first off, the race itself is broken down on The Amazing Race into things called legs. And if you've got to do something and conquer legs, you don't want to do it with a guy that's 5'4", right? I mean, that's number one. Number two, we'd be at wit's end the entire time. And number three, the challenges that you have to do, he's afraid of everything. You'd have no chance, right? So I've been thinking about who gives me the best chance to not only get selected for the show, but to actually win or go deep into the show so I can see as many places as possible. And the reason I ask it, I think you'd be an interesting one. You got the TV background, number one, so you're good there. Number two, like when you're on the show, you've got the meme people can use of that Jeremiah Johnson movie character that was played by Robert Redford, I think, so that works. But most importantly, your circus background as a trapeze artist, that would come in handy for some of the different challenges. And so I'm curious, what was your circus skill again? I know you've told me before.
Well, Side by Side was my act, my primary act. I was also in an act called Roman Ladders, where you utilize my brute strength as a first grader at the bottom of the ladders to just simply push them in and out while you had three girls on each side. So there were three boys in the middle, three girls on each outside. You push the ladders in and out while they did tricks. So that was just about the strength. The Side by Side, you're paired up with someone. You did different acts or different tricks where you're pulling yourself up, hands on the rope, upside down, just all kinds of cool things. Search Side by Side Peru Circus if you're ever curious.
Okay, so this is the Peru Circus. I remember last year they invited me to go up there for it, and then I couldn't. There was a race or something. I can't remember what the event was. I couldn't make it up there. My goal in life is to go to the Peru Circus after I go on the amazing race. But
okay.
And I'm curious, though, are there child labor laws with this? Like what possibly had you as a 5-year-old out there lifting people?
No, I mean, it's the world's largest amateur circus. So it's all for, kids ages 4 to 19 or 20. And it just so happened to be that was before travel baseball took over the world. And it just so happened that in first grade, 7 years old, I couldn't play. I wasn't old enough to play Junior Farm League baseball in Peru. So I said, why not spend my summer doing the circus? And I only did it for that 1 year, so I don't have the full experience as many Peruvians that are listening might have, but I at least got a little bit of a taste of it. So, yeah.
Peruvians. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We're big in Lima, by the way. We got a satellite office down there. So hold on. So
the Peruvian is the school newspaper, by the way. So
is it
I'm
really?
Not speaking out of turn. Yeah.
Okay. Now, do they still do it? And I mean, kidding aside, because I do find it fascinating. The Peru Amateur Circus, which puts the amateur in amateur, the Peru Circus up there, it has been a great tradition. But like you mentioned, you have travel ball now. I mean, things are just different than they used to be. Is it still as passionately involved for the community as it was 30 years ago?
I can't speak to the firsthand knowledge, but I did go to the circus 2 or 3 years ago, and I was instrumental in getting that invitation sent to you. So I hope you can do it at some point. But it was just as big of a crowd, and walking up Circus City Festival, I felt like it was as big of a deal. So it's a good point. I'm wondering where all the kids come from at times, and those that are playing sports or other things in the summer might be difficult. But you also have, the county athletes as well, North Miami, Maconaquah, Bunker Hill, all of the people in Miami County can participate. So for whatever reason, there are still plenty of people to keep the Peru Amateur Circus going. The third week in July is my public service announcement. Mark your calendars, all performances all week long.
Did you heckle the ladder kids when you went?
No, I didn't.
Boo! This was way better in '84. That kind of thing.
I did not, but the act was still there. They've tweaked it a little bit. They made some changes, so they got to keep it fresh.
But by the way, when we're talking about rural Indiana, we don't use the term tweak, just so you know, just for what it's worth. Jeremiah Johnson, our guest. All right, JJ, let's get back to the game tonight. And by the way, thank you for making it possible for me to get that invitation. I hope I get another one, even though I couldn't make it after you went through those links to get me invited to the circus, because I would love to do it. I'm being totally serious.
All right.
So back to it here. Milwaukee, Detroit, if it's one of those two in the playoffs, which one do you kind of get the feeling that Indiana is a better matchup for Indiana in the postseason?
It's tough. We've gone back and forth on this. It's been a topic of conversation on the bus rides to and from games. as we analyzed the outcomes from the night before. I kind of, as crazy as this sounds, I probably would just as soon play Milwaukee.
I agree.
And when you say that to someone, they look at you. I actually was talking with Jeff Teague, of all people, a few weeks ago, and we were having this conversation, and he looked at me like I was crazy when I said I'd rather take on Giannis than the Pistons. But kind of the way they're playing right now, I still think the Pacers would win a series against Detroit, but they'd get some bumps and bruises, and you don't want any crazy things happening on the court. It almost seems like that's guaranteed with Isaiah Stewart and the way their whole approach is right now. I was not shocked to see the Timberwolves and Pistons get into it last night because the Pacers have had a little minor altercation with both of those teams already this season, and it just seems like that's sort of what the Pistons are all about right now. Their lack of playoff experience would seem to point towards you should say I'd rather play Detroit, but I don't know. For whatever reason, it just seems like the vibes are not good in Milwaukee right now, and the vibes are really good in Detroit. So I think both of those series probably go, 6 or 7 games, and I may change my mind if you ask me a week from now, but right now I kind of say I prefer the Bucks.
Auburn, Florida, Duke, and Houston. Which one you got?
I know that people have enjoyed this. The ratings may say it's been a good tournament. It's not been my favorite. I do enjoy the Cinderella, and I heard you and Jeff Rabjohns talking. I enjoy that Cinderella in the second weekend. I mean, even though they don't win as much, I still like to have those teams to root for. So
for sure,
to have four number one seeds, it's not my cup of tea. But right now, I'm going to say Duke. I never pick the number one seed or the team that is the favorite, but the way they seem to have it clicking on both ends. And I saw Purdue and watched most of that game. If they were able to almost beat Houston, I think Duke can go ahead and beat Houston. And then on the all-SEC matchup, Auburn, Florida, I think, that'll be such a knockdown drag out that maybe they won't have anything left for Monday night. So I think of the four, probably seems like it's Duke's destiny. And I don't think the folks at the NCAA would mind the television rating if Duke's playing on Monday night.
Kent Benson was the last white American player taken number 1 overall in the NBA draft. Do you think he's like sitting around hoping Cooper Flagg has a terrible Final Four?
Like the Miami Dolphins when a team loses?
Correct. Kent Benson's been popping champagne on draft night for 49 straight years, right? He was selected number 1 overall, and Kareem popped him, and now he pops champagne, right?
Yeah, well, I didn't even know that fact, so I'm not surprised that you did. I don't think it's as widely known, and I'm guessing he will not be cheering any ill will for Cooper Flagg. But it sure seems like he's locked that spot up. And the amazing thing about him is when you think that he reclassified to play college a year earlier, he could and should still be playing high school basketball.
Here's the other thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. Here's the other thing that's amazing to me. I realized he went to Montverde Academy at the end, right? And I know that now with travel basketball it's different. But I look at him and I go, so he's from Maine. Who was he playing for the first 15 years of his life? Like 4 guys from LL Bean and 2 guys from the Gordon Fisherman lot? Like, you know what I mean?
Well, I've heard I sometimes in the mornings listen to Sirius XM NBA radio, and when I'm not listening to 107.5 The Fan, Brian Scalabrine, he coached an AAU team that coached Cooper Flagg. So I'm guessing even if you're in Maine, even if you're 13, you can travel a little bit to find some good competition. So I would say he figured out at a pretty young age that he was going to be an elite player and was able to find that competition with no issues, even though he was living in Maine.
Here's the other thing I know. My understanding is when he was 5 in Maine, it wasn't basketball where he was a prodigy. He was in the side-by-side in the Lewiston, Maine circus. Unbelievable, from what I understand. Still goes back and heckles the kids.
I'm telling you, it's great for agility. I was as strong as I've probably ever been pound for pound. I climbed a rope when I was in first grade. There are a lot of benefits to the circus, and you're going to make your little snide comments, but I'm telling you, a lot of benefits.
No snide comments here. It's fine.
I'm still evaluating what you say, whether I will get you the invite for this summer.
All right.
I can't tell if you're being totally serious.
I'm totally serious. We had a race last year, and I was completely bummed. I called the guy back, and I'm like, dude, you're not going to believe this after all. Because believe you me, there's nothing that is, to me, drives me more crazy than when you try to do a favor for somebody, and then they don't. You're like, seriously? I made a phone call for you, so I do appreciate it, kidding aside. And hopefully this year I'll check the schedule to see whether or not it coincides. All right, Pacers-Kings tonight. You guys will have the coverage. We'll be watching, Jeremiah. I appreciate it as always.
I can't believe we went through this whole interview. I saw Rocky in Oklahoma City on Saturday because it was their mascot's birthday party.
Holy cow.
Rocky
Seriously?
again this Saturday. So it'll be 2 Rocky appearances in front of Pacers TV in an 8-day span, or 9-day span.
Because I don't know who, and I'm very appreciative that they do this for Boomer's birthday this year, but who did Boomer upset? Because this year it was, literally it was like the G League mascot team. Where was Rocky? They've got to do this. They've got to schedule this better. I mean,
there is only one Rocky, so if the Nuggets had a game the same day,
I know, but I mean, even if you can't get Rocky, there are others that can. I mean, Rocky's the creme de la creme. Don't get me wrong, right? But there are others too. I mean, this Hugo the Hornet. I mean, what the hell is that? They bought that thing at a garage sale. Terrible. Just terrible.
I know. Yeah, it was an off year for that. But when you have Boomer, you don't even necessarily need to have the best because you've already got the best.
That is true. Now that Blaze, the Portland fella, he was okay. It looks like he might be a cousin to Rocky, but he doesn't have the lightning bolt tail, and that's the difference.
Well, I saw the Pistons mascot was there on Saturday, and also the Miami Heat looks a little bit like the Philly Fanatic.
Yeah, that's right.
Miami Heat mascot. So those were the 3 that stood out to me at the Thunder birthday festivities.
Well, who's the Thunder's mascot?
I don't even. Sadly, I'm not sure of his name. He reminds me. He's like a grizzly bear. Reminds me of the outstanding Utah Jazz mascot.
Oh, you know what? No, that's isn't it like Sasquatch or something? He came from Seattle, correct?
Yeah, I'm not 100%. I know you're the expert on that. I should be given my mascot.
I think that's right. What's his name?
Rumble.
Rumble?
Mm-hmm.
I think, look up Rumble. I believe Rumble
he's
actually.
a bison.
He's from Seattle, though, isn't he? Didn't he come? There was somebody. The Sonics had some fella, some Sasquatch-looking fella.
They had like Sonic Man. I thought they have a new mascot in the Oklahoma City.
I'm pretty sure that the Sonic mascot. Well, he might have come for a while, and then all of a sudden Rumble came in. You said he's a bison.
Yeah,
he came in like a bull in the china shop and just took over the whole thing, right? Pushed the Sasquatch fella right out of the equation.
I'm guessing Eddie's really glad I brought Rocky out to continue with the show.
We're going to get to the bottom of this, JJ. All right, we'll be watching tonight. Enjoy. Thanks for the time.
Okay.
Jeremiah Johnson, can you look up? I'm telling you, the Sonics had a mascot that was like a hippie-looking Bigfoot fella, and I think he was supposed to come to Oklahoma City, and he might have been there a year or two. And his name was Squatch, I think, right? Because my buddy Tom Savage was a PR director for the Sonics, and had to at one point Squatch got in some trouble. He made fun of a bald guy or something, and they had to smooth it over. Pardon the pun. Are you looking that up, Eddie? Eddie's just staring at his computer.
I'm looking, yes.
It can't be hard to look up Sonics mascots history, right? Who am I thinking of?
Weedle?
Not Weedle.
Yeah, that's the Squatch.
Is that Weedle? He would be very popular.
Squatch was the team's mascot for the Supersonics.
There we go, yes. From 78. No, wait a minute. The Weedle was okay. A Weedle is actually the name of the animal that Squatch was, right?
Oh, okay.
I want to see if Squatch made the move. Okay. Following the Sonics' move to Oklahoma City, the character was retired and remains part of the intellectual property that the city of Seattle retained as part of the Key Arena lease settlement. Oh, so he, so that they're like, no. Squatch stays here. The character's performer from 99 to 08 remains under contract with the relocated team, currently performing as Rumble the Bison. There we go. So the fella moved, but
wait, he dunked through a ring of fire?
Yeah, he doesn't mess around. Johnny Cash was there for that.
I mean, he looks like Chewbacca.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, he's Sasquatch, right? But I thought that rumor was up more like in the Portland area than Seattle area, right? Seems like it's just a Pacific Northwest thing altogether.
By the way, JJ just sent us some pictures of Rocky.
Oh. Rocky's the best. Rocky they should have had at the Thunder game, though, because his tail is lightning, right? You can't have lightning without thunder, and vice versa. I'm telling you, It was last year or 2 years ago when Rocky was there for Boomer's birthday, and he sat down right in front of me, and literally, I mean, I can't explain it to you. It was like being the kid that found the Pamela Lee tape. You know what I mean?
Is this like you meeting the Oregon Duck? You were starstruck?
Yes. I was literally, I was starstruck, absolutely. Did you know the Oregon Duck, did I tell you that we went out for a drink together?
Gosh, where's this going?
We did. Went out for a drink together, and then afterwards, he said that when he drinks, his mouth gets dry. So we stopped for chapstick, and then I picked up something, and they handed him the chapstick, and I was buying something, and the Oregon Duck said, "Oh, that right there, just put it with my chapstick." And the guy said, "Is that going to be cash or charge?" And he said, "No, just put it on my bill." Okay.
Are you here all week?
Yeah, unfortunately, I am.
Gosh.
It's a great song. And we have tickets to give away for Modest Mouse, who is performing this song, along with the Flaming Lips, kind of like what the Oregon Duck had, right?
There's nothing worse than having chapped lips when it's like because of wind. It's awful.
Yeah, it's rough, right?
Yes.
Speaking of that, and by the way, okay, so the Flaming Lips and Modest Mouse, we have tickets to give away. The concert is going to be August the 11th. That is a Monday at Everwise Amphitheater at White River State Park. And we will do it about 10 minutes from now. We'll do a little get to know your listener in about 10 minutes.
Breaking news, Jake.
Okay, go ahead.
Jeff Borzello reporting of ESPN that Miles Colvin has entered the transfer portal for Purdue.
That does not surprise me at all.
Well, I remember earlier Sam King said he didn't expect anyone else to.
The Miles Colvin news does not surprise me at all. I just kind of got the feeling over the course of the year that the expectation was that he felt he should be getting more minutes than he was getting. Good player. I'll be curious to see. Maybe he stays. Who knows? But that is not overly surprising to me. I had an incident over the weekend, Eddie. I'd like people can give me their thoughts on this. I need a little help with this.
This doesn't compare to the Kevin Bowen bathtub incident, does it?
No. Much more docile than that.
Okay.
I did laundry on late Saturday night.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I have...
First time?
No, you know what? Here's an odd fun fact about me. I love doing laundry.
Interesting.
Love it. It's literally one of my favorite things to do. I love it. So I was doing my laundry, and I have kind of like golf pants that I wear for race weekends.
Yep.
Like gray, the new, whatever this material is right here. I guess it's probably like a polyester or whatever, but everybody knows what kind of pant, the thinner golf pants.
Yeah.
And I was washing them and then put them in the dryer. And when I took them out of the dryer, I'm like, that's weird. It didn't dry them all the way. There's like wet spots all over the place. Almost looked like somebody took just a flick of a paintbrush of water like down the pant.
Okay.
And I'm like, but it's not wet. What in the world? And then I realized the culprit, and I think I'm probably just out of luck here, and I'm going to have to just get new pants. There was an empty beeswax lip moisturizer thing that had been in the pocket and went through the dryer. So the oils of the lip balm got into the pants. I don't think there's any getting that out, right?
Did you try washing them again?
Yes, I actually washed them again right there, and at first I thought it did it, and then I was like, oh, no, wait a minute. So yesterday I went to Riley for my mom's thing, and I looked down, and I'm like, oh, God, like I think my sister actually was like, did you get like water on your pants? I'm like, oh, man, I thought it came out. I think I'm out of luck. Does anybody know how to get, it's a coconut oil lip balm.
Did you ask Shannon for advice? Did you ask your mom for advice? I'm sure she had to clean up plenty of your stains back in the day.
Oh, okay. Thanks. That's good. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Tomato sauce.
Okay. I did not.
Blood.
Blood's a tough one.
I don't know where your mind was going there.
I'm on blood thinners. Let me tell you right now. Blood. There's only one thing that can get blood out. You ready? Hydrogen peroxide.
Oh. Maybe that'll get the oils out.
That's actually not a bad call. Maybe it is. I mean, that's possible. Wash the pants with a very small amount of Dawn dish soap. Okay.
When in doubt, always use Blue Dawn.
Okay. Excellent on jewelry, by the way.
That makes sense because it's supposed to help with like cleaning up grease.
Yeah, it's excellent on jewelry.
Yeah.
Brings out the sparkle in jewelry.
How do you know that? You don't have a wife?
I have plenty of jewelry.
You do?
I'm wearing like 3 different silver things right now.
You are?
Yes.
I thought those were fake.
Hey, Jake, ask your phone via YouTube. Hey, that's cheating. Okay. Put baking soda on the stain, then Dawn dish soap. You may also want to spray with stain remover just before you toss back into the washer. Air dry them until you confirm it's out. See, if they already went through the dryer, though, am I in trouble? Oh, Amy, who sent me that, I forgot to wear my Fishers T-shirt today. Even though Fishers was beaten basically at the horn, they missed a shot at the horn to Jeffersonville. Fabulous season for them. Fabulous season. And to win 43 straight, I know that those kids are disappointed they didn't win the state itself, but fantastic season. And that was a great weekend of basketball at Gamebridge. Lucas Oil, I went to the Purdue game Friday night, and I enjoyed it, but I will say.
Now, where did you sit? Like in relation to where the court was?
So I was in the media seating.
Okay.
The media seating where mine was, and I'm sure there's media seating along the court, but basically, so the court itself, it's kind of confusing when you walk in there. You kind of get, you lose your bearings. But the court was seated, the court was positioned going across the football field at like the 20-yard line, and my seats were in the 200 level behind the baseline. But the problem with having the games at Lucas Oil Stadium is twofold. Number one, it is such a big venue that the noise and the spirit and the energy of the crowd is dispersed out too wide. So you just don't get. It's really dark. It's really dark, and then there's like one light. It was like being at a boxing match. Number one,
it's that stage lighting.
Yes, and number two, it was difficult to hear. I mean, the music and the video board, everything was really loud. But I think the bigger thing is the venue is so big that when you went out to get a Coke or use a bathroom or whatever else, it wasn't like this intimacy of fans elbow to elbow walking around and like, just the energy of the building of like the nervous energy and everything else. It was kind of just people strolling around like, yeah, okay, yeah, whatever, we're at a game. It's hard to explain, but it just, I thought it lacked the intimacy that you get in a smaller, typical basketball arena. Now, when we come back, tickets to give away. We'll do it. Are we going to do Get to Know Your Listener?
It's Monday. Why not?
239-1070. That is 239-1070 is the telephone number to call in. We'll do a little Get to Know Your Listener, and we will get you on your way for the concert on Monday, August 11th. It's going to be a great night at Everwhite's Amphitheater for the Flaming Lips and Modest Mouse. that news just coming out within the last half hour or so, I hate to say this, that I don't find that overly surprising. Good player, certainly an elite level athlete at the college level. And where he ends up, we'll see. Now, one other bit of news, Cincinnati assistant Drew Adams, who is a Bloomington native, apparently will leave Cincinnati and join Darren DeVries' staff at Indiana. 239-1070, the telephone number. Do we have a caller lined up for the tickets?
Yes, David.
David, how are you?
Oh, doing well. How are you?
Good. Have you called the show before, David?
I'm not. Actually, maybe a long time ago.
Okay. If you don't mind me asking, David, and are you familiar with Get to Know Your Listener? We've had a lot of success with this. Kids love it based on the research that we do. Are you willing to be a participant?
Sure.
Okay. Don't sound so excited, though, David. If you don't mind me asking, David, how old a fella are you?
I am 40.
40-year-old David? Okay. Yep. I'm going to guess that puts your graduating class of high school somewhere around 02 or 03. Is that right?
02 it is.
02, and that would be from what school?
Carmel.
Okay. And when you were at Carmel, David, you considered your chief rival to be A, Hamilton Southeastern, B, North Central, C, Ben Davis, or D, Warren Central, E, none of the above.
Rival would have been Ben Davis.
Are you fastening your seatbelt, or are you taking off on an airplane?
I'm doing both.
Are you on an airplane?
Yeah, I'm on an airplane, man. Ben Davis.
Ben Davis, okay. Where are you flying to, David?
I'm not really on an airplane. That was my seatbelt buckle.
If you could be flying somewhere right now, where would you go?
Probably New York.
Where was that again?
New York.
Yeah, I like New York. All right, lastly, David, here we go. Auburn, Florida, Duke, Houston. Who you got?
I'm going Houston.
Are you typing while you're driving, by the way?
No, it's just my truck rattling a little bit.
Oh, truck? Like a regular truck, or are you an over-the-road trucker?
No, just a regular pickup truck.
Okay. You said probably Houston. Is that who you think?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. If Houston wins it, there will be a lot of Indiana fans that are not happy about it because of Kelvin Sampson. But maybe they'll be happy because that means that they eliminated Duke, so you take the good with the bad. But, David, you will be on your way to go see the Flaming Lips Modest Mouse. Going to be a wonderful night on Monday, August 11th at Everwise Amphitheater, White River Park, courtesy of our friends at Live Nation. Enjoy it. Should be a lot of fun, especially, man, the weather's going to be perfect. Might be hot that night. We'll see. And if it is, you'll have Flaming Lips, right? Isn't that right, Eddie? You don't seem to be engaged with the fabulous, one-liners of the day.
They're bad, Jake. They're not. They're just bad. Like, nothing worthy of the. None of those. None of those.
Work with me here. A friend of mine that I grew up with, Tanae Weinglass, just texted me. I don't think she knows she didn't know what I do for a living. And she got in apparently a workmate's car today, and the radio was on, and they had the show on. And she sent me a message and said, I just grasped this. You talk for 3 hours a day? Pretty much, right?
Yeah, give or take. Whenever I talk in the commercials, yeah.
Probably all told, what do I talk for? 2:10?
And our guests. It depends.
2 hours, 10 minutes, something like that?
Yeah, that's probably right.
Okay. Pacers tonight taking on the Kings in Sacramento. Eddie will be, of course, producing the radio broadcast of that with Mark, Eddie, and the group.
Yes, sir.
We now know no Miles Turner. He is out with illness tonight. No Benedict Mathurin. He is out. Sacramento looks pretty good on their health status. The question is what that means for the Pacers. I think, number one, it's going to mean Thomas Bryant. Number two, it's going to mean defensively there's going to be some challenge there with Domas Sabonis because he is obviously very good in the low post. I think, actually, if you look at – and Thomas Bryant they got him basically for free, right? I mean, free money essentially with Thomas Bryant.
Does Tony Bradley get some work?
That's what I was just going to say to you. I think Tony Bradley actually was one of those signings that initially they probably looked at Tony Bradley and thought, like, okay, it's kind of a roster fill. Okafor, for example, they brought up on the 10-day. But Bradley, all of a sudden, I think he's played pretty well, and he's become kind of an important piece for them because they've had to use him in a couple of different spots. Not of late, but I think, yes, don't you expect, Eddie, that he'll get some minutes tonight?
I'm sure because he's a good rebounder and he's a solid defender, and going up against Sabonis tonight, that is something you're going to need because he just inhales rebounds. And that is an area in which the Pacers have struggled the most this season, is rebounding outside of their defensive issues. But I still contend that if you can, limit the number of second chance opportunities, and if you're only getting out rebounded by, 5 to 8 rebounds a game, then that'll be fair for the Pacers. That gives them a shot to win almost every night.
You know what's interesting?
It's when they get out rebounded by 10 plus is where they get into major issues.
You know what's really interesting? If you look at the Pacers season and you look at the Pacers just statistically right now, they have like the 4 or 5 guys that are probably at bottom of rotation happen to be the 4 or 5 guys they have with 2 first names. Have you ever noticed that?
No.
Think about this. Tony Bradley. Okay. Now, Thomas Bryant, would you say Bryant is a first name?
Probably not.
I mean, I guess you got Bryant Reeves, right? So you get a half there. Okay. Ray Dennis, right?
Ray J. Dennis, maybe.
Isaiah Jackson, hurt.
Yeah.
Is Jackson a first name? Okay, Quentin Jackson?
Jarris Walker?
Jarris Walker, right? That's it. That's every player on the roster with 2 first names. Do you think that's like some sort of a curse? These are the kinds of things that keep me awake at night. These are the kind of brain droppings that hit me at like 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, you know what? Now that I think about it on the Pacers roster, who are guys with 2 first names?
Well, Quentin Jackson.
That's what I said, Quentin Jackson.
You said Isaiah.
I said Isaiah, and then I said Quentin. But Isaiah Jackson is hurt, obviously.
I don't think you're naming your kid Furphy, Neesmith, Nimhard, Matherin.
Right. Siakam, no. Freeman, no.
Turner.
Okay, not bad. Not bad. Turner can be a first name, yes. Oh, Bryant Gumbel. There's another Bryant. I'm a fan of Bryant Gumbel, even though apparently he's like the most arrogant dude on planet Earth. That's always been the word, that he's the most arrogant dude on planet Earth. Eddie, how much of the Final Four did you watch?
Well, Final Four hasn't happened yet.
I'm sorry, the Elite Eight. How much of the Elite Eight did you watch?
Not a ton. I was working pretty much every day over the weekend.
I watched almost all of the Florida-Texas Tech game, and I watched a lot of the Houston-Tennessee game.
I saw the second half of Houston and Purdue.
And obviously I watched that whole game, yeah. J&B just arrived. Speaking of the Purdue game, that was a lot of fun on Friday at Coach's.
Yeah, they got completely screwed
They
late,
did.
though, didn't they?
But that was fun at Coach's, though, hanging out with those guys from Purdue
hell
and
yeah,
Matthew and everything.
Oh, great time.
It's great.
It was a great time. I got to see Shannon, which made it even better.
I liked how the two of you acted like you haven't seen each other in a while.
We did, yeah.
Now, how long did you have to hear about that, Jake?
It was awesome to see Shannon.
We went to dinner, and then she's like, "Can we go back to Coach's? You think John's still there?"
No, it was a good time down there. I wish Purdue would have had more of a favorable whistle, and we'll see with Miles Colvin. That's a little bit surprising. I guess nothing can really surprise you anymore. But.
Yeah, I don't know if I've said it on the air or not, and I don't mean to be that guy, but he's the one guy that I just had a feeling
bigger role. Got to have a bigger role, right?
Yeah,
is that what it is?
Kind of, yeah.
And
I
then
kind of
Matt
got the
Painter's
impression.
not going to promise anybody bigger roles, so unless you prove it. So that's kind of the way that it is.
What's lined up on the big show today, John?
Zach Osterman will talk about Bloomington. They've got transfer portal stuff, visitors in. Tim Garl's done after 44 years. Kind of knew that was going to be happening, right, with that changeover. Certainly that's something you've talked about. Zach joins us. We got buckets. We'll talk about Colvin. We'll talk about Purdue. Is Denary coming on today? Denary at 4:30. Kings in town. No Miles Turner. No Benedict Matherin.
Correct.
Tonight against Sabonis and the Kings. And Tricia Whitaker. She's doing Apple baseball now, I believe. I think she's going to join us coming up in the 5. And Stephen Holder from the owners' meetings.
I tried to watch baseball this weekend.
Yeah.
Just on normal television.
You saved us. He was going to.
Huh?
He was going to talk about this, and he forgot until just now.
No, but honestly, on Saturday I was like, it was kind of dreary out, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna flip through and find a baseball game. I thought maybe I could watch the Reds, whatever. Nothing. The only game that it was like when we were kids. The only game there was a weekly game on Fox, and it was the Cardinals and Twins.
You
that was
can't
it.
get it. You can't get the Reds, or was it blacked out? Somebody had told me the Reds game was blacked out
on my cable when I went to it. It was like poker or something. It was not. There was no
You better not do that for DirecTV. I didn't notice that. Was that Saturday you were talking about? I think
Yes.
I was already gone Saturday. I watched the Reds yesterday, and they suck. I did not watch them Saturday.
Eddie's going to the game. Is it tomorrow night?
Yep, tomorrow night against the Rangers.
It's kind of cool, right? All right, John's up next.
Yep.
He will carry you home until 6. We'll be back with you at noon tomorrow, and I thank you for listening to Query & Company.